Hello friends, this is Akulmach Live and I'm Chandrakant, and today is Friday, and we thought we will have a little bit of fun. And when we talk about fun, I think we are trying to see understand the common problem that all of us have, that is honking, and what this honking tells about your personality. To discuss this, I will be joined by my good friend from UK, Mr. Naval Gund. So I will take a short break. We'll join you back along with my guest. Don't go anywhere. Hey Naval, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, CK. Good morning, everybody. Beep, beep. Beep, beep. Have you heard that today already? I have, and I haven't even been in the car. I've heard it from my study, where people just put their hand on the honk or their foot on the honk or whatever it is. So today we're going to be talking about being a happy honker. CK, are you a happy honker?
Come on, Naval, I'm an Indian. I love to honk. You know, honking is in my blood. I like to honk for no reason.
Well, the thing is, there is a reason, you know, and well, I don't think we're going to talk about the reasons today. But the thing about it is, when you look at people that do, you know, press the horn, because it's a warning system. That's what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be telling people around you to wake up, or, you know, have a look at what's going on, because you may have missed it. So it's being a friend to other people. I mean, that's the starting point of this. It's that being aware, helping others be aware. Something's happening. You've seen it. Maybe the other person hasn't seen it. Does that make sense, CK? It's an early warning system.
Well, technically it is an early warning system, but we honk for no reason. You know, I've seen people on the signal and their thumb is always pressing after every 5 seconds, pee, 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 for no reason. You know, they are so desperate to get out, and they want to, you know, so desperate to ask the driver in the front to get out of the way immediately. You know, just get out. You know, I need to go straight, and the light is still red. You know, they keep honking. So I think what you said technically is right, but when it comes to practice, it is not so right, Neville.
Well, right or wrong, people honk. And I have noticed that the way people honk these days is changing quite a lot, really. Certainly in India, when I was out there, it was almost like it is part of your right. It's in the statute books. If you don't honk, there's something wrong with you. From little motorbikes that are out there that sound like Roadrunner, meep, 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 to the real big, you know, horns that come with these huge lorries. Get out of the way, you know. It's a bit like a train's coming through, or you haven't seen me. What on earth are you doing? But I wanted to have a little experiment, CK. Are you up for an experiment?
Yes, I'm your guinea pig, Neville. Shoot it.
Well, you're my honking guinea pig. I did a little experiment a few years ago, and I do this from time to time whenever I'm bored, really. I was in traffic. Doesn't matter where I was. It was in Asia, that part of the world, and we were in some serious traffic. And all you could hear was honking. Can you just imagine, you know, everyone going beep, beep, honk, honk, you know? And the thing is, it was going on for so long, it was quite clear that some of these batteries were going to run down, because, you know, a lot of the vehicles on the road in that particular area are not particularly well maintained. And you could just hear that as over time, it must have been 20 minutes, maybe twice as long as that, maybe 40 minutes. And you could actually hear some of the noises be muted. You know what it's like when a battery starts to run down, CK? And so I said to the driver, I said, let's just have a bit of fun here. And the driver was up for it. I said, do you know any popular music that you could, play out on your horn? And he said, I've done this with my children. It was a foreign language, so I had an interpreter. I've done this with my children before, and we've had a bit of fun. I said, okay, well, let's have a bit of fun now. So he just started to play a tune on his car horn. And it was really quite amazing because as the tune became more repetitive, the people around our car sort of started to look over into the vehicle I'm hearing something that's got a melody now. It's not a me, 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 me. It's got some form of melody. And what happened was they stopped beeping their car. They took their hand off the horn. And more people were looking round. And the driver was having so much fun. He was adding the drums to it as well, bashing away on the steering wheel and hitting the horn. So he was having a whale of a time. So he was almost like a busker, a one-man band in his car with just this one horn, which had one tone. And then what we noticed, after 2 or 3 minutes, other people started to join in with the same tune. So it was almost like there was an orchestra playing in that one area. And of course, as lots more people join in, the noise goes up. And it was deadening out all of this other honking that was going on. Now, we didn't get out of the car and walk, a quarter of a mile up the road to find out if anyone else had started in. But the fact of life is everyone started to have a bit of fun. And they were smiling and laughing, and all the angst and aggravation about being stuck in traffic had been taken away. So have you ever done that in the car, CK? I've done it many times with the kids and they love it. Have you ever done that in the car with your kids?
No, Naval, I have not done this. Because in India, what you get is you have a horn in the front, and you also have horn with connected to the reverse gear. So there are all kinds of melodies, you keep hearing, and these reverse gear horns are very melodious. It will play some famous Hindi movie song, and so some states have banned these reverse horns, but then there are 29 states, 1.3 billion Indians. You can't stop everyone. So honking is a big part of our culture, I think.
Honking is a culture. Yes, I've heard all of these. Be careful. This vehicle is reversing. This vehicle is reversing. Beep, beep. This vehicle is reversing. I mean, we get them all the time, really. And again, it's just a reminder that these are warning systems. These are warning systems. But if you're going to be stuck in traffic in future, just have a little bit of fun. If you really do feel as though you should be beeping away, then beep away to a tune and just see what happens to the people around you. I mean, I'm regularly, when I'm stuck in traffic, I don't beep away, but I'll have my music on. And if a particular song comes on where there's drums or trombone or trumpets or what have you, I'll be bashing away on the steering wheel. And I'm sure, many other people look over and think, whatever he's doing, we need to be away from him. So it's probably a good way to get people to get out of the way. But the point about today is be a happy honker, because most people I see in vehicles where they've got the hand on the horn, it is this red lights ahead. I mean, you can't go anywhere, but they're taking frustration out on it. And you can see this sort of anger in their faces. But let's try and turn that today, just for a Friday, let's turn that on its head and become a happy honker. What do you think? Can we run a competition of people that can literally on their phone record themselves honking away when they're stuck in traffic. And let's see if we can guess the tune.
Well, that's a very good idea. In fact, this session is live, and people who are watching, they can actually submit their clips if they have. Otherwise, they can submit it later. I think it will be very interesting for involvement of people. And I think most of the people are honking. I think they're used to honking. I'm sure there are a lot of motor mouth kind of videos people would have. They can submit it here and we can have a little bit of fun. But I think you made a very important point. I think on a serious note, when you see people honking, what it tells about their personality, I think that is something also is important, because people honk in a different way. Sometimes it's frustration, sometimes for no reason, as I said, and sometimes for actually sending a warning signal. So, what do you think? Different people, can you, put them in certain spreadsheet based on how they honk about their personality? What do you think, Neville?
Well, I'm sure people will try to do that. I think what we can find out, we certainly will know someone's personality if they really do put their hand on the horn and don't take it off. But the fact of life is, if you're stuck in traffic, if there's a red light in front of you, guess what? I really would like to go. I would like to move forward. So anyone around me, if you're honking me to get out of the way, the real bad news is I have no choice. I have to wait for that light to change. I've been there many times this week, actually. This is the summer season of roadworks we have in the UK. Because it's good weather, and I say that very jokingly, because we've had thunderstorms and goodness knows what else over the last few weeks. But because it's good weather, there's lots of construction activity on the roads. And just locally, we've got temporary traffic lights. And the worst thing about temporary traffic lights is you don't know that they're going to be there. There's no advance warning. All of a sudden, you just see this traffic light on a road that normally you're traveling along, and there's literally no speed limits. Well, no real speed limits. You're going along at the usual 30 or 40 mile an hour, depending upon what the local requirements are. But on my road, it's a 30 mile an hour road. And you just don't expect to see a traffic light in front of you. Anyway, the traffic lights were there, and regularly, even when I'm in the car or I take a walk around the corner every now and again, I will see people beep the person in front because they hadn't noticed the lights changed. And some people are so fast at getting on that honk. Our lights go from red, amber, and then green. So the red amber is green's coming, But as soon as sometimes the red amber goes, I hear people get on the horn. In other words, wake up in front, it's about time you're moving. I'm a very important person. I need to be somewhere, get out of my way. I've paid my taxes. I've paid my road tax. I need to be on my way. And that's the reality of what we've got here. So you can sort of extrapolate someone's personality by their horn behavior. So why not have everyone being a happy horner or a happy honker, as they say, or as we've just decided to call it, the new hashtag. Are you a happy honker? And then what we can actually find out is that everyone's happy. But the reality of life is they won't be. But, what do you think, CK? Can we have happy honker trending just from this little fun on Friday?
I think we can have a happy honker trending, because anyway, nobody's driving nowadays. So we can do that. Otherwise, it's quite annoying, keep hearing honking all the time is quite annoying. And the more you honk, that means more desperate you are. And that is the one trait that you get, the person who's more desperate will honk more. And one more thing, Neville, even though it's a funny episode we are doing today, but I think honking will lead to road rage, because if the honking does not yield result as desired by the driver, the next step is basically he gets out of the car and gets into a rage kind of a situation. So I think we need to stop honking. While the episode name is Happy Honking, but I think we can talk about it during lockdown and we are all stuck in our homes because anyway nobody is driving. I think we should come out with a different kind of honking system because it's a time for AI where the vehicles can be connected using some signaling process, and without making any noise you can just press the honk and the nearby cars can beep some light that there is some warning or stuff like that. So I think there is a time for innovation and we can get out of this usual honking, because I think this is medieval from our standard, you know. People were doing honking 100 years back, we are still honking. So I think we need to move forward from there and do something about it. Don't you think so?
Well, I love the trip into technology. I'm sure there's someone listening that's got an app in mind. Perhaps you can create a happy honking app. There you go. There's a challenge for you. Any young person out there that fancies a bit of fun on a Friday, and send it to us, and we'll push it round. Because like anything else, just as you were speaking, I could hear someone honking in the background. So whether it's your end or my end, it's actually getting through the airwaves. And it's traveled several thousand miles between me and you. So again, let's just have a little bit of fun today. Let's see if we can change the mood of a nation. If you're stuck in traffic, you don't want to be stuck in traffic. The people that have designed the roads don't want you stuck in traffic. They've designed the roads actually to make traffic flow freely so that you can get to your destination in a comfortable way, so that you're unflustered, you don't get angry, you don't get annoyed. The last thing they want is a very angry driver. When we're on the road, we all need to be friends to everybody. Give people the right of way if they've got it, and don't take any silly moves. Don't move from one lane to the next and become that road rager that people don't like. So, bit of fun today. For all of those that are listening, it's hashtag happy honking or hashtag happy honker. So are you a happy honker, CK?
Actually, I can say I'm a happy honker as long as my honk is melodious. So I think I'm going to try this idea which you gave us today, which is, train your thumbs to press the horn in such a way it comes out like a Mozart.
Well, it's actually funny because as we speak, I've just had a text in from someone who's watching BBC News, and they've got the cricket on, and in the background you can hear people hooting away. It's at Lord's, the home of cricket in the UK, and apparently someone yesterday was sitting in traffic outside, probably a taxi driver, and they were honking the music to the introduction to cricket over here, which is okay. So there's the rendition that they did yesterday. I didn't know about that, but it's a friend of mine that's just literally texted me because he's listening in. So we can all have a little bit of fun. No one wants to be stuck in traffic, let's face it. But you can take your temperature down, take your pressure down, and utilize these ears, or what's in between these ears, for a little bit more fun. And yet again, I hear a little beep in the background. So there you go. Happy honking day to everybody. It's now official. This is Happy Honking Day.
I think we can end our discussion on this positive note, Neville. And thank you so much for finding time and joining us to make our show very hilarious and also meaningful at the same time. We will catch up with you next week at same time on some other interesting subject. Have a nice weekend, Neville.
And everybody else, enjoy today. Take the frustration out of driving and just relax. Have a little bit of fun when you're stuck. Take care.
I'm Kanchan from Akulmach Technologies, and you are welcome to our series Great Kings of India. And today we'll be discussing about Samudragupta, who is one of the greatest king of India. And I think many of you may not be knowing that he established entire India, conquest entire India, leaving few parts of Kerala and Gujarat. So, to discuss more about this interesting king, we have an eminent historian, Meeta Joshi, who is the head of the department of one of the prestigious college in Hyderabad, Saint Anne's College for Women. So, without wasting any other moment, I'm so eager to know about Samudragupta, who established the Gupta dynasty. So, welcome to the show, Meeta ji.
Namaskar, Kanchan. How are you?
I am fine, Meeta ji. How are you? How's
I'm
everything?
also good. So, everything is fine. So, I will talk about Samudragupta.
Right.
Samudragupta was the son of Chandragupta I,
Okay.
the founder of the Gupta dynasty, and a Lichavi princess. Okay.
Okay.
So, he is also called as the Indian Napoleon
Oh, really?
by many historians. Yes,
Okay.
like historian Vincent Smith, he coined this word. He compared the conquests of Samudragupta with Napoleon Bonaparte.
Okay.
But here, many historians have different opinions because Samudragupta was in the 4th century CE and Napoleon Bonaparte was in the 18th century. So, yes, and the empire of Samudragupta was almost the entire Indian subcontinent, leaving some, pockets of coastal Gujarat and Kerala.
Okay.
But if you see the empire of Napoleon, Napoleon Bonaparte in the 18th century, then he conquered, he was ruling the present France. Okay, then the northwest is Italy, western part of Germany,
Okay.
and small countries like Switzerland and Belgium. So if you compare, area-wise, there is no comparison because Samudragupta's area was way bigger than Napoleon Bonaparte. This is one difference. Another difference is, according to the Allahabad pillar inscription written by one of the officials of Samudragupta, Harisena, who happened to be his court poet also. So he wrote in that inscription that he was the hero of 100 battles. Who? Samudragupta. Okay. And if you leave the battles of North India and if you just count the battles which he fought in the Deccan, in down south, then you will be amazed to know that he participated in 29 battles in Deccan and South India alone. And it is said that he fought more than 100 battles, Samudragupta.
Okay.
But if you see the wars of or battles of Napoleon Bonaparte, he fought 60 battles in his 20 years as a commander of the German army, and in those 60 battles, 8 times he got defeated, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Okay.
But Samudragupta was an undefeated ruler.
Oh.
All the wars he fought,
Okay.
he was never defeated. He
Oh,
always won.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Samudragupta was a ruler, but Napoleon was made a prisoner by the Britishers and he died in captivity in St. Helena in
Yeah.
one of the islands.
Right.
So the comparison, you can say that, okay, the conquests of Samudragupta and conquests of Napoleon were similar. Okay, but you cannot compare Samudragupta with Napoleon because if you see the personality, if you see his rule, there is no comparison. Napoleon, and as I told you, Napoleon was in 18th century.
Right.
And Samudragupta was in 4th century CE, so almost 1400 years after Napoleon came.
Right.
So there is no comparison. But because one of the European historians termed him as Indian Napoleon, so
Right.
he is known in historical records as an Indian Napoleon.
Right.
Why? Because Napoleon was a warrior, and he was a main figure in the French Revolution in 1789. Samudragupta, he established his empire with when he started as a king, his empire was very small. But sitting at Patliputra, because his capital was Patliputra, and then fighting so many battles and establishing a huge kingdom, but managing it very, very nicely. Because what he did, he, in all the wars, it was not only, deaths and blood.
Right.
He went to the rulers and he asked them to accept his suzerainty. So,
Right.
who agreed, he annexed their kingdoms to his kingdom. So, that way, very, very intelligently, he worked, Samudragupta. And uh, if you see the model of administration, it was very, very nice because after Samudragupta, many rulers have copied that model of administration. Sitting at Patliputra, managing such a huge empire for a long period of time. Because if you see, Samudragupta was from 335 to 370 AD. Okay, and as I told you, in the there are many inscriptions. This is known as Prayag Prashasti. Prashasti means inscription. So in that inscription, he is described as a hero of 100 battles, and because not only he was a warrior, he was a very good poet. He was a very good musician.
Oh.
So he had a multifaceted personality. And in his reign, art, architecture, in every fold there was development. And that's why, because of his, administration and the development he did, Gupta age came to be known as the golden age of ancient India. It was not like this that everything was gold, but the development which happened,
Right.
and then a very good coinage he floated, Samudragupta. Pure gold coins were, started by Samudragupta, and those coins had an influence of Kushans. Kushan were foreigners.
Right.
So when you see the coins,
Right.
the dress which the emperor is wearing only had little differences there, because they used to Kushans used to wear a pointed hat. He was not wearing a pointed hat, Samudragupta. Some modifications here and there, but because he had this influence on him, Kushan influence, and uh, when he was an emperor, not only the domestic policies, the foreign policies were also very good, because he had friendly relations with many countries like Burma, Ceylon. So, and he followed Vaishnavism, but he was tolerant towards Buddhism also, because that time Buddhism was flourishing. So
Right.
he was tolerant towards Buddhism, and he even gave permission for many for the construction of many stupas, viharas, and monasteries of Buddhism. So that way, if you see Samudragupta, his personality in total, he was one of the greatest kings of ancient India. One of the
Yes, I
greatest king.
can very
And
well understand that,
yeah,
because if we see into the modern India, even Maratha also moved towards the north, and they were not able to sustain that empire, though they were so strong empire. And I can very well visualize the empire so big. I mean, from north, from maybe Kashmir to really Kanyakumari, leaving few parts of Kerala and few parts in Gujarat, and then maintaining it.
huh, coastal Gujarat and Kerala were left. Otherwise, the Deccan down south, North India, everything was conquered by Samudragupta. And
Yes.
some historians, they also compare Samudragupta with Ashoka.
Right.
But that is a wrong comparison because Ashoka was all for non-violence and peace
Okay.
after the Kalinga War.
Okay.
And Samudragupta was all for wars, conquests, aggression.
Okay.
So two different, ideologies.
Mhm.
But if you see the extent of the empire, that matches because Ashoka had a huge empire, Chandragupta Maurya had a huge empire. Same way, Samudragupta also had almost the whole Indian subcontinent under his reign. So
Yes.
that is the difference.
Yes, and that is the thing I think we are missing out. We always remember a Maurya dynasty. We think of and talk of Ashoka, but somehow in some matters we are missing out Samudragupta because he has managed to have that big empire, and then he is also a good administrator, and he knew how to really do the management day to day. So, in spite of being general, a good general, he is a good administrator also. Otherwise,
Yes,
it's difficult to really
he
manage such a big
see,
empire.
as we call Ashoka as Chakravarti Samrat. Chakravarti means who was ruling the entire thing.
Right.
Same way, they used to call Samudragupta as a Chakravarti.
Right.
Digvijay. Digvijay means who has conquered all the dishas, all your north, east, west, south. And even for Samudragupta, it was said for his horses that they have tasted the water of 4 oceans because the extent was so huge.
Right.
So Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, all these oceans, because the trade and commerce was also very good. So the main ports were under the Gupta Empire, under Samudragupta. So that's why it is also said that he and his horses have tasted the water of many oceans, 4 oceans.
Right.
And can you imagine, Kanchan, a person who fought 75 odd battles and never got defeated? Never ever.
Yes.
So
So
it is
good.
a real,
Right.
a big thing.
Right.
It's a huge
Very big.
and and that times the army which Samudragupta had, it was a Chaturang army. Chaturang means infantry, cavalry,
Okay.
this cavalry, infantry, then a unit of these horses and elephants. So all that all together, artillery. So it was a very, very well organized army also which he had. That's why they were able to conquer and they were able to conquest the entire Indian subcontinent because of the army also. Not only administration, his strategies, his war strategies, and his diplomatic policies. Because with some kings, he was diplomatic. He asked them to, come under his suzerainty and he annexed their kingdoms into his. So that way, he developed the Gupta Empire in by all means, art, architecture, music. He was a great musician. In one of the coins, he is shown as playing the veena.
Right.
And it is written in some text that even the musicians of gods, they got defeated by Samudragupta when he played the veena.
Oh,
There
great.
is one
He's a
story.
he's a master.
Ah.
He was a good personality. He was a general and musician. So two contrasts actually. So because
Because his love for music, his love for poetry,
right.
is very another side of his personality.
Right.
But he was like that, Samudragupta. A great warrior king. You can call him a great warrior king, a good administrator, and because of him only the Gupta age reached the glory, and that's why the Gupta age was known as the golden age in ancient India,
I know.
because of all round development,
I know.
art, architecture, administration, everywhere the progress was seen. That's why it is known as the golden age. But after him, like the successors, Ram Gupta, Skand Gupta, they were not as great as Samudragupta, but somehow they managed, to take the legacy forward. But the face of Gupta Empire is only Samudragupta.
Okay.
Only Samudragupta. No one else.
So it was so wonderful to talk to you today. We will be discussing Samudragupta, who is the greatest, one of the greatest king of ancient India, tomorrow. And we'll discuss more about how he managed such a big empire and how he managed his army in our other series. For today, it was so wonderful to really talk to you and know more about Samudragupta. I'm sure our viewers will be benefiting about to know about this knowledgeable topic. So till tomorrow, bye bye, madam.
And thank you, Kanchan.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Akulmach Technologies and welcome to Top Brass. We want to discuss something very interesting today. This is related to our kids who are doing digital study, who are at home and they are still joining schools. Uh, and what is the impact on their personality? So before we start our discussion today, let me welcome my friend from London, Mr. Naval Gund.
Good morning, CK. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, it's a really important issue about our kids, really. And I don't know about you, but we've had an increasing level of lockdown over the last 4 or 5 weeks. We're now operating a 3-tier system. So we're still in the COVID arena. And the most disruptive tier is the 3rd tier, which effectively means everyone stays at home. And you move progressively down to the 2nd tier and the 1st tier, where the restrictions are not as severe. However, unlike a complete lockdown, one element that's really fascinating about this particular time of development, and we all know about the disruption to education in the past, is that schools will stay open. And there's a really important reason for that, because it's recognizing that young people need other young people, not digitally, but physically, to help them grow, to develop their personality, their soft skills, and their academic learning. And that's been a really important change to the initial elements of lockdown as to today. And indeed, we've seen it in France, where France is now going into a complete lockdown period, with the exception of schools. Schools will remain open, and Germany as well. So everyone is coming to this dramatic realization that young people actually, irrespective of the fact that they're more immune to this virus, that's actually a very secondary issue, but they need each other to grow, which is a really important statistic. And I'm sure you're seeing that with your kids having been at home and the antics that they get up to at home, haven't you?
Naval, let me share what is happening in India. India being such a large population and so many students, there are millions and billions of students. At least 300 million students are there in India who need to go to school and colleges. I don't know for sure this number, but I'm just taking a guess. Now, everybody is under lockdown and they are actually doing their studies digitally. The problem is, in fact, all of us, myself included as a parent, we objected to the school 2 weeks back that this is actually creating a bad situation mentally for the students. So, they can't be there in front of PC from 8:30 till 4 p.m. and with 15 minutes break in between. So finally, from this week, the schools have modified their schedules and they are saying 8:30 to 12:30. However, what about the physical activities? What about knowing their comrades? What about best friends, a circle of friends? So how they talk to each other about something which is not related to studies. They want to discuss about Star Wars, how they do that. They have seen some TV serial, how they talk about it. So I think these are big challenges which at least in India as a society we are facing big time. And I'm sure this is going to create a big psychological problem for the young students.
Well, definitely, and not least anything else. It's it's not just their education has been disrupted; it's their lives have been disrupted. So it's the focus that they've had while they've been at school. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that the schooling system in India has said, well, rather than 8:30 to 3:30 or 4 o'clock, whatever it was, with a 15-minute break, we're now going to condense it into 4 hours in the morning. Because what's the reality of this? Let's look at a typical child, okay, and a typical day at school. We can all think about our daughters, our sons, or even our grandchildren. When we take them to school, what physically happens? Well, you're there early. You're not going to get your child there late, are you? I mean, that's for secondary school kids that go on their own. But when you're taking your 5-6-year-old child to school, you're there early. So they go in when the bell rings or whatever it is, the signal for everyone to come into the school. And then you say that your goodbyes, give them a kiss on the cheek and off they go. Go and have fun, enjoy yourself. That's your parting message. Well, it should be your parting message. If it's not, you need to change what your parting message is, okay? So you should be saying, go and enjoy yourself. Go and have fun, okay? Get the mindset working on this. Education is fun, not a chore, not like something like the washing up, or cleaning your bedroom. They're chores. Education is fun. So now you've left your child, and you've left your child in the hands of a dedicated professional, someone who's dedicated their life to teaching children just like yours. So what happens? They go into the classroom, they have a little chat with their mates that they may not have seen overnight, and what was on the TV. So there's a little chatter that's going on, and that's perfectly acceptable because that's real life. It's what you do when you go into the office. You say, oh, what did you do yesterday? Did you get stuck in that traffic jam? That's real life. So these kids have got a real life too. And then the teacher starts to bring everybody in to attention in many respects. Now the formal day starts. And when that formal day starts, throughout your career, you've got about 1 million minutes in school. So that's, say, 7 hours a day, for which there's an hour lunch break and little breaks for intervals during the day. So that makes about 6 hours a day. 5 days a week for most people, and approximately 40 weeks a year for about 14 years.
And if you do the sums, multiplication, it's not difficult, works out at about 1 million minutes, just a little over 1 million minutes. Sounds like an earthly long time, doesn't it? But how much of that time is productive? How much of that time in that school arena is your daughter being productive?
Well, if we talk about the usual school, then I'm sure it would be somewhere maybe half or maybe 70% of the school time, which is productive, and 20% time is also productive, I would say, because the children are still learning how to make friends, how to break friendship. I think these are all becoming worldly wise other than study. So that is also important. So when I say 75% of the time is utilized for studies, but the other 25 is not wasted. They are becoming worldly wise. They are becoming clever. They are becoming more savvy how to treat others, what to say. Those are the skills they will learn at school while interacting with their comrades. They will not learn while interacting with parents. So I think I would say 1 million minutes, as you said very nicely, Neville. I think all of it is useful for students in school.
And you see me smiling when you're saying about, oh, I'm now thinking about this, It's not 100% productive on education and passing exams. There is this social connectivity, which is why schools are now staying open, despite the fact we've got some tight restrictions during COVID, because it's that connectivity that's really important. Now, in the big world, in our business world, we would call that networking. How we network with each other, how we develop our personal skills, our negotiation skills, Oh, I've got an apple in my lunchbox. You've got a banana. How about I trade an apple for a banana? And the other child will say, well, actually, yeah, that's okay, but you've got a chocolate biscuit. So if you give me a chocolate biscuit and an apple, you can have my banana. Those are the skills, frankly. And I can remember doing that sort of stuff. This is quite sad, really, but I can remember doing that sort of stuff. And kids do that automatically. They don't realize what they're doing. But it's preferences, it's building preferences. It's negotiation skills, it's communication skills, it's marketing skills, It's sort of saying, yeah, that's okay, but you've got a chocolate biscuit in there, and I'd much rather have those two than just your apple. I mean, just imagine that conversation going on around the world. We wouldn't have a leadership problem, would we, frankly? Because we'd have the best business networking people in the world. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen all the time, but you've hit the nail on the head. Is it 20%, 25%, 30%? It's somewhere around there. It's approximately a third of the time we're in school where we're networking. And a really good teacher will be encouraging that type of networking, at the same time making sure it doesn't get out of hand. So there probably is a band of where acceptability, so below here we're not having, in between here that's okay, up here I'd prefer to be, So up here is the real learning area. This is where the teacher's got attention on the specific subject. In here is a bit of negotiation, and down here is unacceptable. And of course, in some of the schools where you see a high level of disruption, we're in the lower tier. So unfortunately, the say 30% of acceptable discussion is now closer to 50, maybe 60, or pushing 80. And at that point, that's when learning stops. And that's the problem. So I think the message we got today is there is this collegiate arena where your children, your grandchildren need to be communicating and collaborating with other young people. And even in the digital world, they could be very disruptive. And it's up to our parents now, because they're at home learning, to clamp down on that disruption. What do you think?
So, Naval, from this discussion, what I want to tell the ed tech companies, the people who are making so much noise about ed tech today, because the ed tech itself is pushing the boundaries and making fintech as if it is that as a thing of the past. So I want to appeal to ed tech companies that I think the time is absolutely right. I don't think our children can study in a scenario where they just see the photo of the teacher and just keep listening to her or him. I think the time is right to create an application in the digital world to replicate 1:1 experience of a school, so that you create a breakout sessions, you give student ability to make their own circle of friends and so on. I think there is a requirement because none of the school systems are offering that kind of functionality. But I think especially a country like India needs it because we have so many young students and the competition is very, very high in this country. The students started going to school really at 2.5 years of age, because if you have not done your play school, the next school will not take you as a child, because they will say, hey, you have not done play school, I will not take you in Montessori, for example. I'm just quoting an example. So when very young, when you're a toddler, because there is a competition, parents tend to put their children at the age of 18 months to a play school because you need a certificate to get to the next level. So I think with so much competition and suddenly there is a break on that. So where is the art of, how the Indian students will compete? How they will learn this art of competition? How they will say that, okay, fine, I've got these 10 best, brightest students as my friends. Where is the pride in saying that? Because in the digital world, that experience is not visible right now while working from home or studying from home.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is the technology is available. I mean, I know I run many Zoom conferences. I'm on panels, I'm in breakout rooms, and there is all this facility. You can have a breakout room. So even though you're in, you could be in a Zoom conference where there are thousands of people, because I've been in those as well, and on a panel in those. But you create breakout rooms. You could have 50, 60 breakout rooms, and you allow people to choose to go into those breakout rooms, or not, as the case may be. And then you just monitor what's going in the breakout rooms. So there is a way to do it. And the interesting thing is, we need to remember, if it's not COVID, it will be something else. So this is probably a way of the future. Those schools that are getting really good at the digital arena and are now commingling their learning, if you like, I think the model in the future will be a little online, a little at school, and a little networking. So back to this 30%, I think there will be a larger arena of where this 30% needs to be part of the curriculum. It already is part of the curriculum because kids are in school. But we've noticed how much is missing from the curriculum when they're digitally being taught. So we've got a massive opportunity going forward, and all these EdTech groups out there, get after it, because the first one will get the spoils. So let's see who's going to be the early mover.
Certainly, Naval, and I think that we had a very nice discussion, but the solution is not in our hand. But I think we have identified the problem areas today in the discussion. I think there is a need for an application which will replicate the physical world into digital world, specifically regarding schools. So with this message, let us end our discussion today. We will catch up again tomorrow then.
Good to see you, CK. Have fun, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, Neville.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas to you, CK, and everybody out there. National Farmers Day. Have you got enough milk?
We got milk, but I think there's a lot to be done. We have to treat farmers as business people. There are a lot of opportunities, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are waiting to leverage this opportunity.
Absolutely. So it's National Farmers Day, so go talk to a farmer. You never know what you can help them with.
And this discussion is coming up right now.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, friends. And we know we're just 2 days away from the big day, the magical day. And today is also the Farmers' Day celebration in India. And to discuss further, let me invite my friend from UK, Mr. Naval Gun.
Good morning, CK. Good morning, everybody. Yes, 2 days away from the magical day. And actually, Farmers' Day is a magical day because, frankly, without food, which comes from mostly from the land, you and I would starve. So this is a really important day in many respects. And I think what we need to do is to just bring people up to speed of how farming has changed over the years. Because I remember as a child, going to farms. My parents used to have friends who were farmers, and we'd go on a farm and we would do everything. We'd milk the cows, we'd, play around with all the sheep and just generally have a lot of fun. But a farmer's life is pretty tough, in many respects. So, what's it like in India for a farmer these days?
So, Naval, today is a Farmers' Day, and we are giving respects to the people who are involved in this trade of doing farming. And I understand that it's not an easy job. It requires sort of physical labor, and also the knowledge of weather pattern, and also the knowledge of soil, nutrition, and also the knowledge of what crop will grow at in what season and what they have to do. So I think it's very scientific. And many times when we eat food, we don't think about what has gone into producing that food. So I think today's day is very very relevant for India. And as you rightly pointed out, farming has come a long way. It's mostly mechanized. And then specifically with regard to India, there are two predominant farming seasons. And why these seasons are there? Because the pattern in India are uh, very clearly for weather, which drives the whole landscape and the farming practices. Because if it rains so heavy during monsoon, there is nothing that can grow. So that is a time for keeping the field ready for the next phase of farming. So there is one season which happened, we just finished in November. The cultivation happened in November, and then the go downs are filled with food material across the country. And the next season will come just before the summer sets in. So there are very clearly two distinct uh, farming seasons, which drives almost 90 to 95% of the farm produce. So farmers in India have two seasons where they can make money. I will just try to bring a little bit of business around it. That means they have two marketplaces twice a year, and they have to do a lot of hard work again twice a year. So it's not something that we do it in our kitchen garden. That hey, if you want to grow some herb in my kitchen garden, I don't have to follow any weather pattern. But when it comes to the serious farming, which talks about many metric tons of produce, then you need to really follow the weather pattern. And that is why farming is a very big science, which people like us who have never done farming, including myself, don't really appreciate and respect those people who are involved in this trade. So I think that is one aspect of the farming which I feel that we should respect the farmer, and that is why we have Farmers' Day celebrated today. Second thing is in India, there are a lot of cooperatives which are provided, and these are non-government initiatives. The business people, they come together and help create different kinds of facilities for farming people. So they provide hospitals for their animals. They provide advisory on different soil samples. They provide how to get these medicines back in their fields. And these are all cooperative movements where the farmers become member of different cooperatives, and they actually leverage certain activities which these cooperatives are bringing to them, and using them make their cultivation and produce the farming produce, and then the cooperatives then help them sell it also further. So it's a complete ecosystem which is available in India, which is being leveraged. And there are things like if the animal dies, then how to dispose of the remains. All that is part of all these activities so that the work happens smoothly and there are no hardships provided to the farmers when they are doing working really in the field. So I think there is a complete ecosystem around it in India.
Oh, there's definitely a complete ecosystem, and thanks for taking us through rather a rapid condensation of what goes on in the farming industry in India. And as you mentioned, cooperatives. As you well know, I use the word collaboration. Cooperatives are a collaboration, and they're a good collaboration. And a lot of businesses outside of the farming industry could actually help those cooperatives really succeed. Um, Anyone in the SaaS arena, software as a service, for instance, can join the fray, because guess what? Most farmers, they don't specialize in software. They don't specialize in this type of service. They're really good at doing what they are. So you could join these cooperatives, and we encourage you to go and do it. Go and talk to them. See what you can offer them from your world, because that's how we're all going to grow. Excuse the pun. But anyway, let's just think about one specific area: AI, artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or automated process. Because farming is one of those arenas that's had a lot of automation come in probably quicker than quite a lot of other industries. For instance, just the process of milking cows today, it's not manual. I remember as a child, about 5 or 6 year old, and I'm sat on a stall and I'm milking a cow, you know, pulling udders. It was only a small farm and they hadn't gone into automation. Um, but it's how we learnt about husbandry of the farming arena, how animals are important to our future. But today, there isn't a milking farm in the world that hasn't got automation. You physically you go in and you see it's almost like a Ford production line. If you imagine the Model T Ford being built all those years ago on a production line, well, milk is a production line. The cow comes in, the machinery goes on its udders, and it pulls out a certain amount of milk dependent upon the cow. What I learned many years ago was that each cow doesn't produce the same amount of milk. So some cows actually are on different settings. And the farmer knows all this. And today, they don't even have to know it, because each cow is microchipped, and the microchip sets off, okay, I've now got Maisie the cow, and Maisie the cow has come into my stall, and Maisie, we're going to take exactly 4.5 pints from Maisie because she's on that particular cycle. So it's far more automated than people realize. And I wonder how many of our entrepreneurs out there have even thought about the processes that go on in this heavily automated arena. What do you think?
I think India as a country has a huge potential for getting these technologies in. Um, and there are other areas also related to farming. There is one area which is related to fresh water conservation. So India has a huge population and huge landmass. At the same time, it does not have a great freshwater source. We have few rivers. We have built a lot of dams. We try to, get the water, fresh water from these rivers, which are predominantly coming from the Himalayas. But it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient. We have built channels all over the place, but that are not sufficient. So we are getting new technology on water conservation and drip irrigation from Israel, because Israel, they are the expert world leader in this area. So we're getting a lot of support from them. Similarly, in the area of AI and merging that with mobility, I think that will be a killer solution for India, because at a lower cost, a farmer will be able to use an app to control how much the drip irrigation he has to do in what section of the field, and also how much nutrients are required in the soil of a particular section of his field, so that his resources can be utilized appropriately. He does not water where there's enough moisture in the soil and look at the other area of the field. And similarly, he does not over fertilize the land where the fertilization is not required. So these are the things which a country like India would need, and I'm sure there are a lot of work happening by the Indian entrepreneurs in this area. I think the challenge we get right now is getting the sensors at a lower cost, because right now, uh, most of the sensors are manufactured out of China. Those are not very real good quality. The real good quality are being manufactured by Germany, but they are very expensive and they are far away from the reach of a common man. So I think that is where the challenge is. The software, automation, AI, dashboards are already there. With I know personally in my ecosystem, there are at least 10 to 15 companies, startups, and SMEs having these systems. The challenge they face is getting these sensors so that they can supply these to different sensors to farmers uh, at a lower cost.
Yeah, as you say, we're really moved into technology in the farming industry, and I've got a couple of projects going on with a drone company where I'm a non-exec, and we're doing a lot of aerial mapping. You mentioned water. Water's a huge issue with regards to farming. In India, in monsoon, you've got too much of it, and in many parts of the year, you've got none of it at all. So it's that conservation issue, and it's not just having the right crop in the right place, but it's also finding out where the water sources are. And as I say, we've got two big projects going on currently using drones, because you can get to pretty inaccessible parts of your land by using a drone, if you've got a really good pilot. There's another issue. There aren't many good drone pilots out there, so calling all drone pilots, let us know who you are. You've got you've got that issue of capturing a lot of data very quickly and creating something that someone else can then use. Because in the company that I'm helping, they haven't got water specialists. They're a drone company. They're very good at what they do. They map terrains. They do a 3D modeling, and they're using sensors. And as you say, sensors are really the way to go now. Um, we use sensors all over the place, and it's not just for farming, but for COVID, for instance. We're now taking temperatures from a whole area using one little sensor in a drone. It covers a huge amount of. Imagine a cylinder being formed around a drone. It's not quite a cylinder because it's almost like a cone. So you have a drone here, and in a conal area, you're actually measuring the temperature, which is absolutely fascinating. The amount of capability that we've built into all of these very small sensors is just phenomenal. But, we need to move on. And the key thing is there's lots of businesses out there, hopefully, are thinking, well, perhaps I need to be talking to farmers, perhaps I need to be, finding out what their problems are, because we've got some solutions that we we can't use anywhere else, and maybe they've got a problem. But like anything else, CK, there's no point in creating a great solution if you haven't got a problem. I remember many years ago, there's a program on the TV called Dragon's Den in the UK. It's got various different names around the world. But fundamentally, what you have is 4 or 5 money men, money people, that are sat in front of you and you're pitching to them. And it's all televised. So it's done for entertainment, really. It's not the sort of place that I would suggest people go into, because it's the entertainment factor that they're after, not whether or not you've got a good entrepreneurial product. But I remember one particular product was a beach bag. And when you got to the beach, it rolled out as a towel. And I'll never forget what one entrepreneur said, one of the dragons said. They said, so what you've invented is a beach towel in a beach bag. And they said, yes, fundamentally, that's what we've done. He said, well, I've got a beach bag and I've got lots of different beach towels. So why would I buy yours? Which means when I roll out my beach bag, I haven't got a beach bag. So if I want to go, somewhere else and I want to take my beach bag with me, I've got to take my towel. My simple point here is, don't create a solution until you find a problem. If there's a big problem in the world, and believe you me, there's lots of problems in farming that they'd love to solve, but they're thinking as farmers. They're thinking of what they've currently done. Don't get me wrong, they're probably quite well advanced. So they're thinking in an advanced way, but they're perhaps not thinking the way you think in your industry. I've spent a lot of my career working in oil and gas, and you wouldn't be surprised, but many people are surprised about what we as a management team would look at elsewhere and bring it into the oil industry, because we'd never seen it before. Some of the most simplest things in different industries that they take for granted, that I would sit there and look at it and go, wow, we could do this and this and this where we are, which was a real leap of faith in our industry. But for them, it was common sense. So the message, I think, today is, being National Farmers Day, think about what you could do for the farming industry, but find out what their problems are first. And how do you do that? Have a conversation with a farmer or someone that works in the sector and ask them, what are your problems?
So, Naval, I think you made a fantastic point of identifying what is the problem. And I think the entrepreneurs need a problem to solve. I think that is where the entrepreneurship is, based at. So there is another issue with the farmers in India specifically, is that they have to now take the next leap. It's not only the technology available to them at a very, very lower cost. They also need to find advanced ways to sell their produce. So there is a requirement for, some sort of e-market, so that they can sell their produce directly from their farm, and they don't have to carry the truckload of produce into some central location and then try to sell their produce in an exchange. So the exchange can be brought as part of their uh, portal, which will help them find out soil condition, water condition, health of the plant, weather pattern, and also the e-market. So I think there is a whole lot of integration possible uh, for the benefit of Indian farmers, and that has not yet happened. I think the field is quite open. Uh, there are a lot of ideas which a lot of entrepreneurs can leverage and provide to this segment. And as you rightly pointed out, Naval, and I'm very thankful to you for saying that we have to treat farmer as a businessman, because we have not treated them as a businessman so far. So we talk about their problem, but nobody goes and talk to them. So I think the first step would be to go and find out what they need. I think at this juncture we can end our discussion. There are many things to discuss, but I think we will celebrate Farmers Day, and after 2 days there is going to be Christmas, the magical day. So I wish you once again a very happy Christmas.
A very happy Christmas to you. And don't forget, farmers are real people. Go and talk to them. You've probably got something that can really help them, but only if you have the conversation. And they're not going to come to you because they don't know you. They don't even know what you do. But at least you've got the advantage. You know what they do. Or do you? We'll see. It's great talking with you, CK. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Reval, and we will catch up tomorrow again. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Hello friends, welcome to Akulmach Live. We all know that the Aryans or Aryans as Europeans call them invaded this part of the world, and they decimated the local population of India, and they brought their culture, they brought their value systems, and we are all descendants of Aryan. Is it true? I think that is what we want to discuss today. So as the theory is called Aryan invasion theory, and how much truth behind it, we will actually analyze it based on the historic facts. The problem really started by Italian merchant who visited India in 1584. His name was Filippo Sassetti, and he actually wrote in his journals that there are a lot of similarities between few words of Sanskrit and few words of Latin. And he said that there are few similarities, etc., and he wrote in his journals, and that actually triggered certain thought process that how during the ancient time these two civilizations were in connection, because we believed that they were separated, but essentially the language evolved. That means there could be some connection. So he left that an idea, and then he moved on until the time when the Max Muller came into the picture. And then Max Muller and Muir, who are the European scholars, they gave a theory of Aryan invasion. They in fact said that the Aryans or Aryans, they invaded this part of the land and they colonized the entire area between Indus River and the on the west and on the east Brahmaputra. So the river basin, which is very, very fertile, they removed the local population from here and moved them into forest area, and they established their cities, towns. They brought their religion, they brought their way of life, and they also brought their value system. And so this, since these are European scholars, whatever they said was considered as truth, and that gave rise to something called Aryan invasion theory. In short, AIT, and now it is highly acclaimed theory. In fact, there are a lot of historic reasons why it became popular, that the Aryans from European or the Middle Asia invaded India and established the current Indian civilization. So I want to basically discuss further on this. What was the reason behind propagating this theory? And I think one of the key reasons was that the British was ruling India at that point in time, and they had very troubled time because of 1857 uprising against the British Raj, and that was considered to be the first organized opposition they had faced for independence of India, and they crushed it with a lot of force. And they knew that the India can get united all people in India, and if they are united, then there will be a problem for the British Raj. And they wanted to get rid of this situation, and they wanted to create a divide in the society. And AIT, which is Aryan invasion theory, was the perfect tool they used to divide the societies of India. And they actually created a scenario where they said that the Aryans actually came to India, and in fact they took it beyond what Max Muller said, or Muir said, that the Aryans came to India, and the current urban population, the people who reside in cities, are the descendants of Aryans, whereas people who live in the forest, which are mostly tribal, they are the actual natives of India. And by saying this, the British created a proper divide among the people of India. Because before that, there was no narrative of people coming from outside and fighting with the local people here. And by doing so, they not only divided the country on the basis of ideology, they also said that we are also European and we are sort of an Aryan, and therefore we are also here. So they actually draw an equivalence with the previous invasion, with the invasion of British into India and then further colonizing India. So that was their theory, and this was the entire divide and rule theory of British is based on the Aryan invasion theory, which was propagated by Max Muller. Then Max Muller realized that all this theory that people are talking about, and especially British is propagating big time in India, is based on no analysis. There is no evidence to prove that there was an invasion. There was no evidence to prove that the rituals and cultures came from somewhere and it was imposed on the people of India. There was no evidence. There was nothing, no analysis being done. So no study being done. And therefore, Max Muller, being a scholar, he corrected himself in 1872 when he actually gave a speech in a university called Strassburg University in Germany, where he said that the Aryan invasion theory is incorrect. And there is no evidence of Aryan as a race being visible today. There is nothing like that. So in spite of Max Muller correcting himself, the British continued on the propaganda of Aryan invasion theory because it suited their narrative of divide and rule. And therefore, this theory was popularized by them. And in 1920, they also discovered the Harappan ruins, the Harappan civilization, and then they actually found they created an evidence that, look, here is an evidence. This was the city of local people which was decimated by Aryan invaders. So they actually, without finding further proof of what really happened and what really, on the basis of archaeological evidence, they never did any study and they never proved any invasion because of which the Harappan civilization met their downfall. But they continued on their political narrative of saying that the Aryans invaded, and because of that, people were living in the forest, and those are the tribals, and that is why the divide is there among the Indian population. So they were successfully created this narrative and also created this divide. And further political movement happened in India. India became independent state on the 15th August of 1947, and Indian politicians then took reins from British and they start ruling. However, the divide and rule policy still continued, and so much so the Indian politician of the day refined this divide and rule further. They actually created a system around it, and they actually created such a policy driven framework around divide and rule so that they can continue to be in power while the people of India are further divided based on religion, based on region, based on language. So they did all that because they wanted to be in power, and that divide and rule policy continues for very long time. Even till today it continues. because whatever they did, we are still living in that narrative. However, nobody actually proved that the Aryan invasion theory was correct, and whoever actually tried to give a counter narrative of this, they were actually trolled, and publicly their character was assassinated, and they were asked to shut up, and government of India appointed their own historians just like the British did, and they continue to create the school books. They continue to write different types of intellectual material to make sure that this theory of Aryan invasion stays alive. However, nobody tried to actually dig deep into this and try to analyze further and clearly specify whether the invasion really happened or not. So by doing this, the political system of the day further divided India, so that people, without even knowing that they are getting divided, and once the people are divided, the politicians will get benefit out of it, and they started ruling this part of the world. So I think this is something which has happened, and even if you look at the traditions, culture of India as of today, almost everything has come from the native Indian civilization. If whatever we know, whatever British based archaeology survey was done in Harappa, they had certain rituals, the same rituals we all follow today. For example, swastika came from there, the marriage system came from there, the worship of using temples, etc., came from there. So there is no evidence of any any influence of something else which is coming from outside India. In fact, the whole civilization evolved here, and there was no break in the Indian civilization. That is why we call that the Indian civilization is the oldest surviving continuous civilization for 10,000 years. So there is no concept of any invasion coming from outside. However, people talk about invasions coming from the west to India, but why don't we talk about the Aryans going from India and invading Europe? Because that would explain also, I'm just saying that would also explain some similarity of few words between Sanskrit and Latin. Because that could have happened when there is so much influence of Indian civilization onto the far east countries like Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, Myanmar of today, Malaysia. Why not Indian civilization left their mark on the western side? It could be a possibility, which requires more study, more evidence gathering. And if you look at the Chinese population, most of them follow Buddhism. I mean, they are communist right now, but they were Buddhist, which also evolved in India and spread into China. So why we don't talk about the ideology spreading from India to rest of the world? Why we only give evidence? We believe that the Aryans invaded India and not the other way. So this is a question that I asked. If you have an answer, do indulge with me. Do send in your comments, and I will meet you in the next one.
Hello, welcome to our series of Delhi Sultanate and Mughals. And today we are joined by a very eminent historian. She is Mrs. Meeta Joshi, who is the head of the department of one of the prestigious college in Hyderabad. So before we start discussion about today's topic, and that is Raja Sultan, and would like to welcome her today.
Welcome to the show, Mitaji. How are you doing today?
Namaskar, Kanchan. I'm fine. How are you?
I am perfectly fine, and as you know that we are discussing Razia Sultan, and so I would like to ask you, what is the importance of Razia Sultan in Delhi Sultanate? Why we must discuss this this head of the state in Delhi Sultanate?
A very good question, Kanchan. First of all, why we should discuss her, because she was the only female Muslim ruler of Delhi, and she was the first female Muslim ruler of the subcontinent, which makes her very, very important. Because in the Delhi Sultanate rule, which was an Islamic rule, and as you know, there were many restrictions which were imposed on women. In that scenario, a woman emerges out to be a leader is really commendable. So that's why we should know about her.
So, what are those circumstances which initiated her rise to the throne of Delhi Sultanate?
See, she was the daughter of Iltutmish. Iltutmish was the son-in-law of Qutbuddin Aibak, who was the founder of slave dynasty or Mamluk dynasty. So after the unfortunate death of Qutbuddin Aibak while playing the game of polo, Iltutmish succeeded him. And Iltutmish had sons too. It is not that he never had a male here. He did have. He trained his elder son Nasiruddin Mahmud to be the successor. But unfortunately, Nasiruddin Mahmud, he passed away in around 1229 AD. And when Iltutmish had some problems in Gwalior, so he went for that expedition. And that time he appointed Razia Sultan as his, in charge of Delhi that time in 1231 AD. And when he came back, he was very much surprised to see that this girl had taken the administration in her hand in a very effective way. So then he was sure and he decided that she would be, his heir apparent. After the passing away of Iltutmish, Iltutmish was succeeded by Ruknuddin Firoz. He was the half brother of Razia Sultana and the son of Shah Turkan. Shah Turkan was another wife of Iltutmish, and she conspired to kill Razia because she knew that if Razia will be there, it would be very difficult for Ruknuddin Firoz to become the emperor of Delhi. So Ruknuddin Firoz was crowned the emperor of Delhi Sultanate. But because Iltutmish knew this, all his sons were into wine, women, all types of luxuries. And he knew that they won't be able to administer the huge empire of Delhi Sultanate. But Shah Turkan, with the help of the nobles which were there, Iltutmish had a group of 40 people which were known as Turkan-e-Chihelgan. So these 40 people, they guided and helped Iltutmish in day-to-day administrative work. So Shah Turkan, with the help of the nobles and these 40 people, Chehelgan, they made Ruknuddin Firoz the king. But as he had no qualities to be a king or an emperor, So Razia Sultana, she appealed to the people of Delhi that you help me to become the ruler, and I will meet all your expectations. And with the help of the public, Ruknuddin Firoz was deposed from the throne, and Razia ascended the throne in 1236 AD of Delhi, and a khutbah was read on her name in the Jama Masjid, and she was declared the Sultan of Delhi. So she was the first female ruler, number one. Number two, the first female ruler of the entire subcontinent too. So that way she is, you know, a great personality if you see her from that perspective. But not only her personality, but whatever she did in the very short tenure of 4 years, from 1236 to 1240, she was the king or the queen of Delhi. And she, because she was a woman, and you know, the nobles, they started conspiring that why a woman should rule men, that male ego. And they started conspiring against her. So she left her female attire, and whenever she appeared in public or whenever she came to the court, she was dressed in a male attire. Okay, and she said the attire should be general, female, or you are a male. There should be a uniform when you come to the court. So that she made sure that whenever she came to the court and she went out in public as an emperor or a queen, she was always dressed in a different attire, like dressed in as if she's not a female, with her turban and you know all those clothes. So that makes her very, very unique, Kanchan, that way.
Well, before we go forward, we have a guest. So now I
Okay.
mentioned that she ruled a very limited period, maybe. So what are those? What is the impact of her rule when we really discuss about Delhi Sultanate? And as you mentioned that she did everything possible to display her capabilities through attire, through administration. So, what is the impact of her rule and how much she ruled on Delhi?
See, the first thing she did when she came to the throne was she, the 40 people who were very close to her father and the nobles, she made sure that they are, you know, suppressed. And she appointed non-Turkish people in important positions. Till now, from Qutbuddin Aibak's time and Iltutmish tenure, these nobles and these Chehelgan, the 40 people who were again noble people, they interfered in the administration too much, which Razia Sultan did not like. So she removed them and she appointed non noble people in important positions. That way, she won the hearts of the people of Delhi because she promised when she appealed to the people of Delhi that you make me the Sultan. And she said, if I don't meet your standards, then you can any day depose me. That she told openly. So when she appointed those simple people to some important positions, so naturally she won the hearts of the people of Delhi. And slowly she made changes in the administration, because if you see, Razia's state policy is still researched Okay. And it is very much discussed in the classes. So, what was her state policy? She always made sure that there should be equality, because as a female, e- every step was a challenge for her. The noble peoples, they were after her life. Shah Turkan, her stepmother, was after her life. So it was a very, difficult times for her. And if you see her tenure, it was hardly 3 years, 6 months, and 6 days. After that, she was killed by a group of nobles. They conspired and they killed her. So, in that small time also, she what main thing she did was she gave up parda totally, because in Islam parda is very, very important. But what she did, she gave up parda and started appearing in the court in a male attire, wearing a coat and a cap. So that way, she defied the Islamic rules. Then she started riding horse, she started hunting, and she started commanding the army. A woman commanding a set of, men in the army, and those men listening to her. So that was her power, you see. And then she took keen interest in all administrative activities of the state, the minute ones and the major ones. She was very much concerned about all the activities of administration. And she herself appointed several iktadars, commanders, and other officers. Now, you will ask me, what were the iktadars? So Ikta system was a very unique system in the time of Delhi Sultanate, in which a piece of land, the person who owned that land was known as an Iktadar. And whatever revenue came from that land belonged to that Iktadar, and some share they had to give to the state also. So she herself appointed the Iktadars and commanders and other officers, and she conducted the affairs of the state in an open darbar. So there was transparency. In open darbar, everyone was allowed to question, everyone was allowed to ask. Okay, so it is, and to tell you the truth, Kanchan, she had all the qualities what a good king should have. But her only drawback was that she was a female. That's why she was, deposed from the throne through conspiracies. And finally, she lost her life. She was killed by a group of nobles in 1240 AD. Though she tried to manage everything, she even married a noble. His name was Altunia. And she thought that maybe, marrying this man would help her in retaining the empress's position. But then, because the group of nobles were powerful and they could not, she could not get over this fact that at the end of the day she was a female, and that too from an Islamic background. So that was her uh, drawback, because one of the historians, Minhas Ustiras, he mentions in his book, he says that she had all the qualities, but only drawback that she was not born in a right sex. She was a female, you see. And being a woman was an important cause for her failure. Otherwise, if people would have supported her that time, then she would have changed the face of the Sultanate totally by her policies. So very open-minded. She was very open-minded, and she was controversial also because she appointed one Abyssinian slave, Yaqut, in a very important position, Amir Akhur. Amir Akhur was the in charge of stables where horses were kept, a very important position. So it was also said that she had an affair with this person, Yaqut, which many historians have mentioned. But how far it was true, because when you conspire against anyone, someone, then you put all types of allegations. So how far, but she had a liking towards that Abyssinian slave is for sure, because she tried to favor him as much as she could that time.
Well, it is.
And then because she was against the yeah. I was saying that because she was against the traditions of Islam, that also upsetted the Turkish nobles, okay, who only wanted the woman to be in parda. And first of all, it was a it was a monarchy. And then in a monarchy, a woman coming up to a position of a sultana. So they could not digest that fact.
Well, it is so tragic that her period is cut short and she was not taken so seriously in spite of being so capable and so much ready to really change and help people. Now, what we can really take away from her short period of ruling of Delhi Sultanate, and what is the importance of her rule when we talk about in today's context? Does she created any impact through her very limited period of time?
See, personally, if you ask me, not as a historian, but as a woman, she inspires me because besides all the challenges she faced, she emerged victorious. And it also, if you see in another perspective, she showed that a woman also is capable of everything. She was a good administrator, she was a good woman personally, okay, and she was very popular among the people of Delhi. Like, she was a heroic figure. And when she went out in the horse, as a dressed in a male attire, so she broke all the boundaries which kept a woman at bay. So personally, if you ask me, she really inspires me because she, in that short tenure of her time period as the Empress of Delhi, she did a commendable job. First of all, she showed women a way. She became an example that when I can do, you can too. So she inspires me very much, Kanchan. Plus the type of administration she adopted, like she herself chose the iqtadars, she herself chose the governors and the other officers, and she had a very amicable, type of relationship with all of them. So that's why the common people, they really adored her and they really loved her. But it was those Turkish nobles who conspired against her, and got her killed, which was very, very sad. But then, see, it has happened in the history every single time. When you say that, woman empowerment, and you talk all those things, but at a personal level, when you observe yourself, you are still the same woman, you know though you are educated, though you are knowledgeable, but at the end of the day, you are not seen as par with men. Every time you're told you are a woman, you have to be mellow, you have to obey, you have to do certain household chores, which are not gender specific, but you have to do. So that way, she should historians to take some inspiration.
Definitely, because Razia always inspired when I was in school, and I really appreciated the profile. And I'm sure there are some takeaway when we talk about Razia, because it was, I can really visualize, it must have been very, very difficult for a lady to really rise so high. So, any last thought you would
Exactly.
any last thought you would like to share with our viewers, and why we should really appreciate this lady who became Empress of Delhi Sultanate, and why it is so different? Because as you mentioned that she has come from a Islamic world, and when we talk about other cultures, women, especially in India, they had those kind of powers. But coming from a Islamic world, I think it must have been very difficult. So, any last thought you would like to share with our viewers?
See, again, I will say that she is an inspiration still to many, many women, because see, in India you cannot say that women enjoyed a very good position. It was only in the Vedic ages that the women were educated, they had a free will, they were allowed to choose their husbands, okay, and it was a different society. But after the Muslim invasions which happened in India, then women were restricted inside their houses, and the parda system originated basically to save the woman from the invaders. It was not like that they wanted to suppress the woman that time, but it was to save them from the invaders, so that because Indian women were always beautiful and are still beautiful, so they don't get allured by their beauty. So that's why this system of parda started. In coming from such an orthodox background and reaching the topmost position of Delhi Sultanate is not a joke. So she was and she is an inspiration, and she will continue to be, because when she in Delhi, her grave is there, okay, in Mubarak Mohalla, in Delhi. So initially, her grave became a sort of pilgrimage, because many people used to visit her grave. And later, when after the slave dynasties, when the Khiljis and Tughlaq, Sayyids and Lodis, when they came to power, so it was a neglected site. And still it is a neglected site, though Archaeological Survey of India does the annual maintenance, but still it is, totally into ruins, her grave. So can you imagine how popular she was, that people used to visit her grave, and very often, at that time it became like a pilgrimage center. So many people used to visit her grave and pay their respects. So you can just make out that what type of a figure she was.
Well, as usual, it is so interesting to talk to you and discuss such a important profile of Delhi Sultan, Razia Sultan. And we'll be meeting again and discuss more about Delhi Sultanate rulers. And till then, bye-bye and you take care.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Akulmach Live. I'm Chandrakant, and today we have a very vital point to discuss, which is about the migration. You know, ever since the life was born on this planet, we have been migrating, including humans. We have a history of migration. To discuss this, I will be joined by a very distinguished guest. Before we welcome the guest, I want to tell you that we are live across all social media platforms. Use the chat function to communicate with us. If you have any question during the show, your name and your question will displayed on the screen directly, and we will actually answer your question. So let me invite the guest. His name is Mr. Kevin Cottam, and he is the CEO of Go Nomadic PT Limited, joining us from Singapore. Let's welcome him. Kevin.
Wow, that was quite the welcome. Thank you so much, Sandra. It's great to be back with you, and I'm looking forward to another great session with you.
Absolutely, Kevin. In fact, I have given a little bit of hints to the viewers about the subject of today's discussion, and it's about migration. So, you know, we have been migrating, all life forms migrate, including humans. So the question that I want to ask you to begin with is, you know, the difference between what happens with the migration related to humans. I think more so about, you know, the migratory animals are called nomads. So why nomads migrate, and how this help individuals in the group in the current climate, especially when the borders are shut in many places. That's really the question. You know, the overall bigger question is why the migration help human beings, and now especially the borders are shut. What are we going to do now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's very interesting about that is that you asked the question, why do nomads migrate? And so one of the things when I was doing my research for the Nomadic Mindset Never Set Up for Too Long, I interviewed a fellow by the name of Roman Simonel, and he is a specialist in anthropologist and specialist in Berber culture. And I asked him that question, and he said to follow the rain. So this is a really interesting question, to follow the rain. So then what does this mean? And it means for them is that they look for where is the rain, the real rain, but they're looking for where that is in the world. And so remember that rain is also, it doesn't have any borders. It just rains wherever it will. So I think the thing here is that for today is that when we talk about following the rain, which is a migration, why do they migrate? They migrate, A, for a better life. Two, people migrate because of moving away from any sort of disaster or wars or inflictions around disease, etc. People migrate. They migrate not because they want to migrate, it's because of survival. And that is what we have been doing, you know, talk about the borders being closed and whichever. But that is a challenge. But we're going to see much more migration coming up and again because there's many more droughts in Afghanistan and Syria and Lebanon. And then you have the trouble in Afghanistan and people are migrating away. Why? For safety, for their lives. to make a better life. So what happens with the COVID? The COVID, again, is about migration of ideas, migration of thoughts. When you think about digitization, and that's really what has been a huge, massive shift in the digital transformation period that we're in, and you've been sharing a lot about that, is that they use the word migration for migrating data from here to here, from migration from information to an app, and migration everywhere is in digitization. So the word migration has really been used in so many different ways. And also, what do we do with borders? Is that we need to get out of the borders of our mind for first thing, because the borders are limiting in today, and we have to challenge ourselves, but we have to find the migration within our organizations. Migrations of people from one place to the next, migration of people from position to position, migration of thought to another thought, migration of ideas, and that's all. Animals they migrate for two reasons. One, seasonally. So what is your season in your organization? What is the migration? And they do that so that they can survive. So that one area of survival is that their economy, their grass, for example, the animals, has gone. So they need to go somewhere where it's more flourishing. It's the same thing within organizations. They have seen their economy drop because a lot of people were not future ready. They've been talking about for the last 10 years. And we need to migrate fast. So that means migrating in the mind, migrating with people, with borders. And this is about getting borders away from the mind, the physical borders, so that people can survive. So hopefully that has shared with you a little bit about that question, answer long maybe, but it gets you around.
I think you have explained quite nicely that we migrate because we want safety, security, resources, new jobs, maybe bring up a new family. So there are multiple reasons for migration. But when it comes to the current context of today's environment, you mentioned Afghanistan and droughts and rains and forest fires. What is the meaning of migration for leadership and organizations in today's environment?
Yeah, a lot of often the word within an organization is called mobility. Migration is equal to mobility. So in other words, in leadership, how am I shifting to new ideas, new processes, new ecosystems, interconnecting, how are we becoming more, mobilizing ourselves in more digitization? All of these things are about leadership. How are you going to lead? And your leadership, you need to have a wide vision. You need to think like a nomad. You need to think like survival. You need to think. So before thriving, you need to survive. And so that is one of the ways forward, is this expansion in your mind. And your expansion will then start to flourish within your organization because you are now giving movement to the organization. So in other words, one of the things in leadership is understanding that migration, mobility, everything within an organization is moving. It is a moving part. It feels like, oh no, we're stuck, we're stagnant, but it's still moving. There's always movement. It's just that we need to find what is the next stage. And be able to do that, you need to go nomading in your mind. You need to start finding all sorts of ideas and creativity and possibilities and unlimiting devices and resources. And you need to allow your people to also go nomading as well, so that they can migrate and to find new ideas and thoughts and work in teams, so that those teams are harmonious, but they're working in an interconnected space with other parts of the organization. One of the things that nomads know is that in migration, we need to understand interconnectivity. So in migration, within an organization and leadership, what will happen is a leader, an elder or chief, will send out his strongest and his most astute warriors to find out what are the trends, where is the safe area, what is going to be the next place for us to land. And that can be a metaphor all the way across an organization. And then the warriors come back, the smart, the clever, intelligent ones, the strong ones, and they come back and they give their information. And then the leader makes a decision. But then he leads the community. The community has to mobilize with them. And that is about trust and respect. So there's a variety of elements that go into migration. Leaders today need to trust. They need to gain respect more than what they're doing. They also understand their communities within their organization, communities external and their clients. How do we interconnect? Not connect, interconnect. That is the word today. Connection is just too limiting. Interconnection is everything.
So having understood that the leaders and the organization require migration, and they have to adapt the new ways of migrating, whether mentally or physically, what is the relationship between migration and growth of the organization and learning of people? Is there a correlation there from your point of view?
If you are migrating, you are developing, you are growing, you are allowing movement to happen. You're allowing teams to be more agile. You're allowing innovation to happen. You're allowing all of these things. And that is allowing the migration and the growth within the organization. But it has to have a plan. It has to be led. And it has to be led by somebody that is not going to be egocentric and say, it's my way or the highway. No, there are many people today within an organization that can share information so that you can migrate, you can be agile, you can adapt much faster. So cutting away a lot of the too much processes and too many factors in organization. You need to limit and you need to simplify everything so that there is more decisions made quicker. And that is mobility. That is migration. So for example, in the wild, the animals, the season changes. The animals don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. They move. The nomadic cultures, when they set out to move to new pastures with their animals, they decide and then they move. But they don't slow down, but they gather the information. So gathering the information in an organization, gathering the new process, gathering the trends, and seeing how do you fit into that will really, really help you to be more mobile. But your people, allowing them to be mobile within. And I say mobile, migrate their thoughts, their ideas, their physical movement, etc. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, I think certainly it gave a lot of information to me and to the viewers also. And Kevin, I came to know that you are also participating in an upcoming global coaching conclave, which is happening soon. Would you like to share some information about this event, where it is happening, who's organizing, what is this all about? It will be really helpful for our viewers.
Absolutely. It's going to be really a fantastic event, which is on September 25th and 26th. The coaching conclave is a baby of Gaurav Arora of ex-monks. And of course, it's out of India, and it's like yourself. And so it's really moving forward very, very fast. There's going to be quite a few speakers. It's really going to be an area and a theme of nothingness to expansion. So thinking about coaching and what is coaching is that it's taking you on a journey from shunya to expansion. And of course, you probably know the word shunya. And so it's taking you from a nothingness of spirit and whichever to an expansion. Again, that is migration. And so the consequence here, the two of them are completely interconnected, is that at this event, it'll be fantastic. So it's going to be, of course, virtual, and it's global, and you can also, there's a link that I believe that I gave you so that you can share with the public to come and enjoy. I am speaking on September 26th. I don't know the time yet.
Yeah, viewers, actually link is in the description below. So if you go down, you can access the link and you can probably subscribe or join. But this is very exciting, Kevin. I think this is going to be very interesting event, and you're going to talk there. So it's also very exciting to learn. Are you at liberty to share some information which you intend to cover over there, or you just want to?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Happy to share. Happy to share. My topic and the title of my topic is the nomadic mindset for masterful coaching. So I'm looking at the nomadic mindset as a process, as a way of coaching. And so I will be introducing for the first time some of the navigational assets, which I would call them, to become a masterful coach. And it'll all be derived and designed from my work and my research around the nomadic mindset and my studies, and also it will be about migration, because coaching is about migrating people from a blocked place to an open place so that they can then make decisions. So it works very, very nicely in with the theme. However, I will share with people who are internal coaches or external coaches or leaders, whoever, they will find some real meaning in the understanding of what is the nomadic mindset. Of recent, I did a talk also out of India, which was wonderful. And that was for the Global Sustainability Development Summit. And what I've realized in many ways is the nomadic mindset is a mindset of sustainability. And that goes back again to what is the premise of what is the nomadic mindset. And the essence is movement. And that's exactly what we've been talking about today with migration. That is the essence of the coaching. And how do we coach this beautiful process and taking it through? So I will be sharing a variety of navigational assets and exactly what it's about.
Wow, I think this is going to be very interesting. Viewers, I think you can reserve your seat today, because understanding the correlation between coaching and migration is going to be ultimate learning for all of us. Now, I think this brings me to the last question, which is about proper coaching. How does it benefit the organizations of today's world?
Coaching. I mean, since COVID has happened, it's like everyone is a coach. And so there's been such a growth in coaching. Some of it's not necessarily what I would say is actual coaching and the derivation of coaching, and a lot of it is consulting. And so coaching is one of the prime processes, I would suggest, in helping leaders move, helping leaders see, helping leaders to be able to be much more migrational in their thinking and their decisions. It helps them to go expansive. You see, one of the things that I realize in with my coaching is that of recent, because of COVID, many people have said to me, and many of my leaders that have come to me, and they said, I don't have time to reflect. And I said, well, this is something that's very important. And I say, what happens if you as a leader, if you don't reflect? And they say, it could go a lot of bad ways, because I need to sit with myself to really open up. So I suggest that the coaching then is actually a reflection. Is there time to reflect? And it is really a beautiful reflection, because it's about migration, and it's about movement, and it's about expansion. So the coaching helps organizations phenomenally. There are statistics, I don't have them off the top of my head, but it certainly is one of those places that is really wonderful. So today, in actual fact, there's a lot of face-to-face or person-to-person, often digital, and also team coaching. Team coaching seems to be the rave at the moment. And so a lot of people are getting to that because of perhaps COVID, because of expenses, but also team. And why I believe that is because we need to coach the community. And that's what I call a team, is a community. It is a clan. It's not necessarily a tribe, because a tribe, in actual fact, is a very large number of people. but a clan, a team is often small. And so under 50 people, and that's usually what a clan is. So anyway, but I suggest it's called the community. And so yeah, I think there's just an amazing amount of possibilities within organizations. I love working in organizations, and I also love working simply with people, because it's about humanity that is my quest, is how can we pull the potential and stardom out of people. You know, from my early days, Chandra, as a coach, as a figure skating coach and choreographer, I always had to look and expand and to be able to understand the human in front of me. And how can I pull out the best creativity? How can I build the best athleticism, the best minds, the best athleticism out of them? And that has led over into my coaching. And I think that that's one of the things. It's about, again, that's movement, right? And so that is what we do in coaching in organizations, and it's big time.
I think developing the nomadic mindset is the most higher form of coaching. I think every individual needs this kind of coaching today, especially when we are passing through a bad phase. Humanity is passing through some of the worst years of recorded history. So to get the nomadic mindset is the ultimate goal. It should be ultimate goal. I think viewers, you can reach out to Kevin directly or join the conclave, which is happening just in few days. Kevin, thank you so much for basically finding time and very briefly covering these subjects. I know these are very, very vast subjects, cannot be covered in 15-20 minutes, but thank you so much for coming over.
It's always a great pleasure to be with you, Chandra. Thank you so much.
Hello friends, welcome to Akulmach Live. I am Kanchan Verma, and today in this episode we are taking you to a very wonderful city which is we call Dalhousie. It is established on 5 hills. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome our guest, but before that, few disclaimers. Welcome back, and today we have Sitesh Srivastav, who is an industry leader, is closely associated with radio broadcasting. So welcome to the show, Sitesh. How are you doing today?
Kanchan, good morning from the foothills of mini Switzerland in India, close to mini Switzerland in India. And that is what it is. It was told to me many years back. A cantonment town, Dalhousie cantonment, came out when Lord Dalhousie was the viceroy of the British Indian subcontinent. But before I take you to the beautiful hills, the Dhauladhar ranges, how are you?
I'm perfectly fine, and I'm really so glad that every week you take us to a trip or wonderful places in the world. And today is Dalhousie, and I really feel very good because since this pandemic, we are not able to go out. We are maintaining social distancing. And when you talk about a city, a place like Dalhousie, I really feel that I want to hear about it. At least I have some solace and some peace of mind by listening your description of this place.
Yes, Kanchan, in this pandemic, we are truly part of a lonely planet. As long as we are not going to the places, but if you remember, Kanchan, of mouth is the best. The stories have traveled, and the Himalayan stories are no less than that. If you see the location of Dalhousie, or for that matter, the state or the province of Himachal Pradesh, it feels like that it is the throat of the Indian map. It is just there. And it gives the best views of the Himalayan peaks. I happened to reach Dalhousie almost 2 decades back. And I have always wanted to be there again and again and again. The Dhauladhar ranges of Himalayas, as you said, of the 5 hills, it is important to note how did the British notice about it, which was more like the Chamba kings. I'm told there were 67 kings in that region. This around the 1857, this place was, identified as a sanitaria or the cantonments for the British soldiers. And the place is beautiful because it gives a very natural views of the Himalaya, the Chamba district, and another sacred but seductive place of Khajjar, Kanchan, Khajjar. We will come to it, but let me know, how much interested are you?
I'm very interested because when I see the picture which is behind you, it's lush green, and I really feel dying and going to this and visit any of these places like Manali, Dalhousie, Dharamshala, and Kashmir, of course. So yes, let's discuss about this wonderful place.
Well, yes, Kanchan, as I said, the Dhauladhar circuit of the Himalayas, it falls with Dalhousie, Chamba, Khajjar, Pathankot, Bharmor, MacLeod-Ganj, and endless views, endless treks, endless memories, new memories to be created. This circuit of Dhauladhar, one tourist can choose between the monastic tour packages, Dharamshala Chamunda tour packages, tea garden tour packages, leisure tour packages, and Bharmor tour packages. From our New Delhi, Dalhousie's distance is just 555 kilometers. Nearest railway station, Pathankot or Chakki Lane, interesting name of a railway station. Hardly 60 kilometers from these two places. Dalhousie feels like an old British town full of so many churches, so many structures. A lot of English stamp is there, but most important is the snow-capped mountains. And it is almost like a 6,400 or 6,500 feet above the sea level. So which is almost double Mount Fuji of Japan.
Well, the Dalhousie was a summer retreat for Governor General Lord Dalhousie. On his name, this place is called after him. Now, what is the difference between Manali and Dalhousie? Which is more convenient and beautiful when we talk about two places?
Kanchan, it's like asking, if I cannot go to Switzerland, where else can I go? It's like this. So Himalayas are pristine. Himalayas are beautiful. Himalayas are breathtaking from whichever angle you see it. But the importance of Manali or Shimla, as we all know, is more about their growth, their development in the modern India, their closeness to the big cities, the businesses, the British Raj, and the movies. But we know in the travel circuit, the offbeat places are the places which are chosen by filmmakers across the world to showcase something which is not seen, which is fresh on the screen. And I'm telling you, Dalhousie makes itself fresh in the memory for any tourist there. And I'm also mentioned about a Khajiyar. And Khajiyar is that secret place which actually resembles Switzerland. Numerous movie scenes from Bollywood have been shot in the Khajiyar place. Very interesting to see the local culture, the temples, the monasteries, the food, the people, and the roads, the infrastructure there. Recently, we have been hearing some natural calamities in that region, especially Kinnaur, Lahore, Spiti. But I'm sure when you are closer to the Himalayan mountains, the beauty of life and the dreadedness of death both are close by, Kanchan.
So I'm sure that you must have enjoyed your stay at Dalhousie before this pandemic started, and that's why you have so much cherished memories about the place. I would like to ask you what will be the best time to go and how many days we can spend at this place to enjoy fully the beauty, the panoramic view, the food of Dalhousie.
Well, Kanchan, when you ask me this question in every episode, I always think that I need a lifetime to enjoy the people, the place, the geography, the culture, the contours, the history, and events, the delicacies, the food. For Dalhousie and Khajiyar, 3 nights, 4 days is good. But I must tell you, one must visit Chamba, one must visit Palanpur, one must visit MacLeod-Ganj, not very far. So I think there is a Dhauladhar circuit, as I said in the beginning. We must take a week's time to visit the Dhauladhar circuit. Enjoy the culture, the people, the cuisine, the history, the nature trails, the adventurous sports, and then come back rejuvenated and with a half of the cost of going to the Swiss Alps, Kanchan. And this is very important these mountains are full of places which are not just rustic, which are not just natural. They are also sometimes man-made places are there, Kanchan, like Kala Top, Khajiyar Sanctuary, Khajiyar Lake, Khaji Nag Temple, Dain Kund trekking, Khajiyar to Dain Kund trekking, Dalhousie Khajiyar Road is almost like 20 kilometers of the road, and it passes through some wonderful treks and the beautiful camping life. There are some snake idols in the temple, which is like a Golden Devi temple. And this is something one must visit, one must dare to see. And interestingly, Kanchan, the name of these places, the places near Dalhousie, and especially near the Chamba district, they have been found in the mentions of Mahabharata and Ramayana as well, and in the Rig Veda, the rivers have been mentioned, and therefore, the district of Chamba in which the Dalhousie falls, and it is something available. Its mention is available almost like 500 before the Christ in the historical documents, and some of the kings, their rules, what they were made, they are still followed in those areas. And not to mention something which is called, very interesting thing, Kanchal, called chambachuk. Chambachuk is the pickle, or the pickle of the chili found in the Chamba region, just around Dalhousie, Khajjar and the Chamba district. And you open it, it is so spicy or pungent. You can't, just take the fume of chambachuk. I brought one pack of it, and I couldn't eat it for 1 year. It is that pungent. What do you say, in chili, most tikhi mirchi I have ever found in that area, Kanchan.
Well, what is one or two things which you really like about this place, Dalhousie? What makes you to really visit this place again and again?
Memories, yadein, churches, St. Andrew's Church, St. Patrick's Church, the temples. And when I was there, I also saw some Bollywood movie shootings. And the best interesting part, Kanchan, that I remember is about the honeymooning couples in the area. And so many people, around the city, just taking a stroll from the bustling cities like Shimla and Manali and Kullu, and every night walking down the roads of Dalhousie is something that is always to be cherished. And the food, that's a very interesting part about the food, Kanchan. Those names are not there in English, so I have to tell you in their original names, Kanchan. So malpude and gud ki kheer, bathu ki kheer, sepu badi, khatta kaddu, channa madra, chicken anardana, malpua, siddhu ghee, kachalu ka salan. It just reminds me that I have to find a Himachali food somewhere in Bangalore city, Kanchan, somewhere today. And it is also famous for some events, ice skating carnival happens. So as you asked me, the people who want to enjoy snow, they must go into the winter season, November, December, January, February. Ice skating competition or carnival happens for almost 3 months. The Christmas and the New Year Eve is a great celebration. Losar festival, which is also the mask festival, Lohri and Mahashivratri. These are some of the festivals that are very famous, including Dashehra. It is very, very famous, Kanchan. And one just goes here to feel recharged, batteries recharged.
What will be the best time to visit this place? As you already mentioned, winter, for somebody who want to enjoy snow, they can go in winter time. But exactly, if a family is planning to visit Dalhousie, what will be the best time?
Well, Kanchan, again, snow is something that I love, but greenery has no parallel. As you can see in the image behind me, this kind of image, to be at this place, I would give my everything to be here every day, every moment of my life. So I enjoy the greenery more than the snow. So being in Dalhousie and Khajjar, if you want to see the greenery, go beyond winter time, after the winter time or before the winter time, to enjoy this kind of greenery, the clean skies. You would remember so many movie songs just by standing at these places. you would actually go to YouTube and see those songs, and you will see, oh, this is the place I saw. And this is, Dalhousie has a very, very interesting connection to the British Viceroy, Lord Dalhousie, who was rather infamous in the Indian subcontinent, more than being a famous, but he also introduced, the railways somewhere in 1853 between Bombay and Thane. So yeah, he is one of the known viceroys, and he chose this place, Dalhousie cantonment. He chose this place as his summer retreat. You can think of the heat of Delhi or Calcutta, and how those viceroys chose to be in the foothills of the Himalayas.
So, in the last, I would like to ask you how you will describe this Dalhousie in one sentence for our viewers.
Husn Pahadon Ka, that's all. That famous song from a Raj Kapoor movie.
So, as usual, Siddesh, it is so wonderful to talk to you today, and we'll be meeting again in the trip of another beautiful city of the world. Till then, bye bye, and you take care.
Yes, Kanchan, I am going on another hill station.
Bye. Hello friends, I'm Kanchan from Akulmach Technologies and you are welcome to our show. Today we have a very special guest and she is Professor Amita Sinha. She is a former professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Illinois. She also taught in the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning, IIT Kharagpur, and she is also associated with Humanities and Social Science Department at IIT Gandhinagar. She is the author of Landscape in India, Forms, Meaning and Cultural Landscape of India, editor of Landscape Perception and co-editor of Cultural Landscape of South Asia. She is also recipient of Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Award. So without wasting any further moment, I would like to welcome Professor Amita Sinha. Welcome to the show, Mrs. Amita Sinha. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me.
See, actually, we had been discussing about the art and architecture of Indian temples a couple of days back, and I was so interested to really know about one aspect of temple building, which is mandala. Because nowadays everybody wants to learn mandala, but what is behind this concept of architecture when we talk about this mandala? So I would like to ask you, what is the meaning of mandala?
So the mandala literally means a circle, and in the context of architecture, the mandal implies unity and completion and auspiciousness. So the circle as a figure, as a form, becomes a miniature of the whole universe as the Hindus understood it to be. But we don't live in a circular world or a world dominated by a circle. So the circle has to be squared. And this interplay of the square and the circle is what we see in the mandala forms. And if I go on to the screen, we can see two Thangka paintings, Tibetan Thangka paintings, the one on the left shows the square within the circle. The square brings in directionality. East is a favored direction, and then north, south, and west also acquire values. So in this Thangka painting, you see the Buddhist deities guarding the directions. On the right is the circle within the square, and within the circle is the Sri Chakra yantra. A yantra and mandala are sometimes used interchangeably, but the yantra is more of a symbol of a deity and a meditation device.
So actually, for our viewers, I just want to tell them that mandala is like a floor plan of universe. And when we talk about these mandala pictures, you see, I have many times seen these yantra also there in our a house temple sometime, and we pray. But now at this point of time, I would like to ask you that what is the link between mandala and the Hindu temple?
So the temple is a later development. In the past, in the ancient past, in the Vedic times, the main ritual was of sacrifice, and the sacrifice signified the birth of the cosmos, because something had to be destroyed for something to be created. And these sacrificial altars, the Vedi that you see in this photograph, was the form, a square form, and the dimensions and the proportions are actually codified in the Silva Sutras, which date back to 4th century. So at some point in time, what happens is that divine is embodied in a deity, in a sculptural deity. And so the temple becomes a house of gods. And the plan for the temple is the Vastu Purush Mandal. Now, the Purush is a kind of esoteric concept. What exactly does that mean? Purush, the human form, but it's really in this case, in the case of Vastu Purush Mandal, it is the spirit of the site. And that spirit of the site can be very malevolent or benevolent. We don't know. It's kind of it's a lower spirit, so to speak. And so that spirit has to be subdued, and the higher gods have to be invited and to make their home. So that is how the mandal becomes a house of the gods. And in this Vastu Purush Mandal diagram, you see that Purush, the spirit of the site, is fitted within the square. East is, of course, a favored direction for the temples, and the temples began to be planned on an elaborate grid, a mandala grid, going up to as much as 64 squares, the Manduka Mandal.
Yeah, so actually, whatever I have read, it is like that. If we are want to understand the mandala art and the mandala form of architecture, so this circular design symbolize the idea of life, which is never ending, and everything which is connected. The mandala also represent the spiritual journey of individual. So now I would like to ask you, when this first temple built, which represent the mandala, and where in India?
So you're absolutely right. The mandal is the spirit. The nature is the primary inspiration, and the nature's rhythms are symbolized in the circle, and then the circle, becomes a square. And this interplay of circle and square, is what we see in the temple form. But let me also say, as temple worship began in maybe 3rd, 4th century CE, the temple form became quite elaborate. So while the mandal was the plan, the form of the temple was actually the whole universe, the cosmos. And so in the temple, you have the Garbhagriha, the innermost cell, which is literally, the beginning of the universe. And this is where the deity is housed. And on the upper diagram, you see these lines of energy emanating from the deity in the Garbhagriha. In the second diagram, you see this circular form, which is the parikrama or the pradikshina around the temple, and that way the mandal is literally recreated by the body going around the temple. And the third diagram shows a temple spire, and usually temple spires imitate the mountain, and so we have this is the axis mundi, the axis of the universe, and the highest spire is over the Garbhagriha, and this is the line, going up to the sky. So your question as to when were the temples first built and where, I should also say that the earliest form of worship goes of which we have evidence is going back to the Buddhist times. And here we see a tree sanctuary, that is people worshipping the Bodhi tree where Buddha gained his enlightenment, and people worshipping the stupa where Buddha's relics were enshrined. And then we see the Chaitya Grahas, the caves where the Buddha relic in the stupa was worshipped. So here I want to draw your attention to the exterior of the Ajanta cave, 6th century, where this Bodhi tree form, leaf form, is there in the window, throwing light inside, and we have the stupa and then the ambulatory passage around it. So the circumambulation of the monks and the interior of this cave temple is of Chaityagraha actually shows the wooden construction of the vault and the rib. So the earliest temples, likely between 4th and 6th century, it's hard to date, but let's look at this Durga temple in Aihole in Karnataka, and it demonstrates the same apsidal form of the Buddhist Chaityagraha with a circumambulatory passage. And we see the tower, a very small, truncated, in a very truncated form in this earliest temple. We also see in the tip of the subcontinent in the Mahabalipuram, south of Chennai, we have these rathas, literally chariots, and the Draupadi Ratha is the simplest form. Again, it is like it's a hut with a straw roof in stone. This is carved out of a stone with Ganga and Yamuna on either side of the entry. A more elaborate form of Dharmaraj in the Dharmaraj Ratha. So these rathas, 5 chariots, are named after the heroes of Mahabharat. And in the Dharmaraj Ratha, we have actually, layers in which each layer is composed of smaller adicules, like they are called the shalas and kutas. And again, these are the huts with a domical roof, and these are repeated. So the idea here is that the superstructure of the earliest temples is symbolizing all of the universe, which is composed of a number of structures, and it is a multiplicity of them.
Actually, this is more an art form or an architecture which is inclined to Hinduism, or it's more to Buddhism?
So it was derived from Hinduism and Buddhism both share, mantras, yantras, and mandala forms, and the vocabulary has the same. They have different vocabularies, but the meaning is the same. So in the case of Buddhist stupas, these are dome-like structures. But when we come to worship in a temple, it is more like mimicking a natural form, which is the cave in the mountain. So that is why we call the innermost cell as the Garbhagriha, the womb of the universe, and the spire as a chariot or a viman, and these superstructures are magnificent, and even in the earliest chariots, vimanas, we see the superstructure as composed of a number of smaller units. So the birth of the temple, I think, really is in the vernacular house, but then it assumes monumental proportion with time.
Okay, so what is the different style of these temple architecture, and how they do illustrate the idea of mandala?
So there are languages, and there are two dominant languages, the Nagara and Dravida style, Nagara broadly North Indian and Dravida South Indian. And there are many, hybrid forms in between. So, but in both the Nagara and Dravida forms, as you see in this diagram taken from Adam Hardy's book, The Temple Architecture of India, the idea of the adicule and the multiplication of the adicule to make the superstructure of the temple is the same. So in the Nagara style, we have these tapering forms, and in the Dravida style, we have these shalas and the kutas multiplied in layers, and they are topped by the amlaka, and over that is the kalash, which contains the nectar of immortality. So the unity is achieved in this, the temple structure coming to a point, and that point is I think we can read it as the achieving of unity with the divine or attaining moksha.
So all these impression of mandala and the formation of mandala in building structure, it is native to India, as I can make out. But do we find the impression of this outside of India also, or outside of Buddhism era? I mean, Buddhism art and culture. Do we find these mandal impression in other civilization too?
Yes, the mandal traveled with Buddhism to East Asia and to Southeast Asia. So we have, very elaborate architecture. The greatest example I think is Borobudur in Java, which is based on the mandal form. And I again want to emphasize the idea of the superstructure of the temple as a symbol of the cosmos. And so even though a temple is like a static structure, built of stone, those are the ones which have survived, to the modern times. It's a static structure, but the symbolism is uh, is that of dynamism, because the universe is always coming into being, right? It is growing, and then it has to be recreated again. And so this growth and movement is communicated in a static structure by the sthapati, by having these multiple edicules. And here in this diagram, we see the downward and outward growth. Again, we see the multiple projection and progressive multiplication.
Right.
And so the universe grows and grows and grows, and it proliferates. And just as our universe is today, and it was always was. But the Hindu belief is that there is a cycle of the yugas, and then after the 4 yugas, there is Shiva dances his Tandav, and then there's a new yug begins, and the cosmos again grows and grows.
So, how does this mandala extend beyond the temple to the landscape? I mean, we also find these forms in the modern landscape also.
Yes, so let me come to that. But before that, I'd like to show you just very quickly a few images of the temples at Khajuraho. For instance, the Lakshman temple at Khajuraho. As you can see in the plan, there is a Garbhagriha, then there are these mandaps, and all of these are, raised on a terrace. And then the temple tower, same in Khandariya Mahadev temple, the idea of growth as in multiple projection, going, and then upward growth can be seen in the adicule, the spire adicule, all culminating in the finial at the Kalash. And then if you go to Eastern India in Mukteshwar temple in Bhubaneswar, again the same idea, but here the Garbhagriha and the Viman are based on a star-like pattern, and in the front is before that is the mandap, Sabha mandap, Nritya mandap, Maha mandap, and these are for the gatherings. And in the case of Mukteshwar temple and other temples in eastern India, we see a pyramidal form. In Western India, for instance, here in Madeira, in the Sun Temple, the temple spire is gone, but again, the linear axis with the Garbhagriha, the mandap, Mukh mandap, the Sabha mandap, and the tank in front. And in Karnataka, in the Keshav temple, we see these three shrines of Vishnu, and these are arranged in a kind of cruciform form with a mandap, and all of this is in a courtyard surrounded by, it's a walled courtyard surrounded by shrines. Here, these temples were made of soapstone, and so we have intricate carvings, and all around we see bands of elephants and horses, and also we see Puranic tales, Mahabharat, Bhagavad Puran, and Ramayana literally depicted in sculpture. So the line between architecture and sculpture is very diffuse. Bhadreshwar temple at Thanjavur was the highest temple of its time. It tapers to the top, and it's a very good example of Dravida style. It was built by Rajaraja Chola, Rajaraja the One. And what now we begin to see in the Dravida style is the Gopuram, the entry to the temple acquiring prominence. And it is like that contains Shala shrines, and these are kind of in a curvilinear form, in a concave form. And finally, to answer your question about the temple mandala extending into the landscape, the best example are the temple towns of southern India and Tamil Nadu, on the banks of the river Kaveri. And so we have very famous temple towns in which the whole urban structure of the town is organized like a mandal. So for instance, in the Ranganatha temple at Sri Rangam, which is an island in Kaveri, we have 7 enclosures, and the Gopurams rise very, very high. They were being built right up to the 17th century. And what happens is that the town kind of is enclosed, the outer parts of the temple enclosure now begin to house structures from the town. And that way, the sacred area extends into the profane. There is Meenakshi temple at Madura is again a very great example of the town structure following the square mandal pattern, and you can see this in the photographed aerial view also. The gopurams are tall. The innermost structure consists of the temples of Meenakshi and Shiva, and then the outer enclosures are where the chariots of the gods and of the god and goddesses are taken out. And finally, I'd like to end with the Tiruvannamalai temple town, in which the Arunachal hill is worshipped as the linga. It's called the linga of fire, and it's a very good example of the mandal as you see in the landscape, because all of the different gods are now symbolized by the lingams. And then on the southeast side, we have the great Shiva temple, Arunaleshwar temple, where Shiva is worshipped, and the gopurams are very tall again, and then Shiva is taken on a journey around the Arunachal hill on auspicious occasions.
So it was so wonderful to really know about these architectural skills and people who have already been in this kind of landscaping, this kind of building making. So do we have more slides to really see? Because I'm so intrigued to really know more about it. Or shall we talk something different? Let's end this and maybe take these slides in our next episode.
Yes, we can continue. Actually, in our next episode, I'd like to talk about the temples of Varanasi, Varanasi being the most sacred city in the Indian subcontinent, and how these temples, which were built much later, still are, communicate the idea of the temple as being a house of gods, and the temple structure as being a microcosm of the universe.
So I think you have to stop this presentation, then we'll be talking more. So actually, so it was so really go through these slides and view these pictures. But now I would like to ask you one last question: is that the universe and sync with the universe and the thought process of Hinduism or Buddhism, I think that are being depicted by mandala form of architecture. Now, can we also do these kind of building creation in our modern times? Are people are inclined to really look into these architectural formation and build something huge in our modern times?
Yes, very much so. The Vastu Purush Mandal continues to be used in house form. In fact, those architects who are exposed in Vastu Vidya are very much sought after, and monumental temples are being built all over the country. Most recent one being at Ram Janambhoomi Temple. It is built by traditional sthapatis, Somnath of Ahmedabad, and this is a Nagara style of architecture.
Okay, so one last question, which I just want to know that many Indian families, they do have these yantras, which are the formation of mandala. Some are square, some are in circular form. So this is a representation of an architecture, or this symbolizes something more?
Well, the yantra you will find as an object of devotion, a symbol of meditation, a meditation tool, and usually these yantras, the Sri Chakra yantra is the most popular one, and it consists of triangles, upward facing triangles and downward facing triangles. So the upward facing triangles signify the Purush, the male masculine principle, and the downward facing triangles signify Prakriti, the feminine principle, and they both meet at the point, the bindu, which is the beginning of life. And so the Sri Chakra Yantra probably is the most common one and often displayed below the deities. And also, I think on the floor decorations, we see the mandal patterns, especially the Sri Chakra Yantra.
Yeah, so it was so lovely to really talk to you and know about this unique concept. And I'm sure that our viewers will have more knowledge about these patterns which we are following for many centuries, but they may not be having knowledge of how important is this mandala formation when we talk about architecture, especially Indian and Buddhist architectural form. So it was so lovely to talk to you, Professor Amita Sinha. We'll be talking more about these formation in our next episode. Till then, bye-bye and take care.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Akulmach Technologies and welcome to Legal Matters. And friends, as you know that we invite distinguished jury, judges and lawyers to our program, and we discuss about the legal aspects which affect the general public and people of India and citizens of India. So today, graciously inviting my friend Mr. Jeet Bhatt from Ahmedabad. Jeet is also a very senior advocate practicing in Ahmedabad High Court. Jeet, welcome to our show, Legal Matters.
Thank you very much, Chandrakant, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm looking forward to having a discussion with you on this very interesting topic today.
Yes, Jeet. In fact, what we want to discuss with you is very interesting. And Everyone. In fact, if you look at the media, it's all over the place. People are discussing about it. The movie stars are getting paraded. It's about the drug abuse or drug use. So it depends, how you want to take it, abuse or use. So I think you are the legal person. You are the best person. I think the law is called NDPS Act. Why don't you tell our viewers about the NDPS Act?
Yes, certainly. Actually, it is very interesting. And rather than use, mostly it is abused and misused. And drugs are not something that can be recommended to anyone except if it is for medicinal or scientific research purpose. But it's an interesting enactment, and it has some history which I would also like to throw some light on. As the NDPS Act, which is currently in existence, is of the year 1985. However, as you are aware, that the narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances are basically divided into three categories. That is the natural drugs, the semi-synthetic and synthetic drugs. So natural drugs which are derived from cannabis, also known as hemp, or the opium poppy plant, or the coca plant, or from the coca leaves, have been in existence for more than 1,000 years. And they've been used in several different traditional and cultural purposes in different civilizations. In fact, coca leaf has been widely prevalent in South American tribes, and they've been using it for a lot of variety of purposes, including cultural purposes. And similarly, cannabis, which is known as hemp, has been used, and its derivatives have been used in India for probably more than thousands of years. And India, as is known as the land of Shiva, and on Shivratri as well as Holi, even today, people consume what is known as bhang. Basically, bhang is also leaves and seeds of this cannabis plant. So they have been in use, in fact, widely has been in used in cultural and traditional purposes since thousands of years. And even interestingly, during the British era as well, the acts which were in existence were the Opium Act, and which was first introduced in the year 1857. Interestingly, that act also did not prohibit the use of cannabis or hemp. And also the later act of 1878, and thereafter another act of 1930, which was again Dangerous Drugs Act. Mostly it prohibited opium and its derivatives and these psychotropic substances. However, the use of cannabis or hemp was never prohibited until lately, when the international pressure uh, was there, and there was an absolute campaign of say no to drugs, and all sorts of drugs in the natural form which are derived from cannabis and hemp are also prohibited. And there were international conventions, and ultimately India also had to succumb and bring into it, of course, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 1985. And it has very stringent provisions and very harsh punishments. And ultimately, this act also now bans these three forms of natural drugs which are derived from the cannabis hemp, the opium poppy, and also the coca leaf. So though it was widely prevalent, though it was used in several traditions and was a custom usage, but still it ultimately had to succumb and had to prohibit the use and cultivation, and it has to regulate it very heavily. And these offenses are also so strict that if you get caught, then there are very severe punishments. But it also divides this drugs and psychotropic substance into small quantity and commercial quantity, which also I'll be talking with you in this session. What is small quantity? What is commercial quantity? And what are the punishments prescribed for small quantity and commercial quantity? Yes, it's a very interesting how it has developed so far, this act and the provision.
So, Jeet, we have put very nicely about the history of this particular the issue that we have at hand, and I think by and large there are many countries which has imposed death penalty if you are found with drugs. So there are some very strict laws, and India also has very strict laws. But what we are seeing nowadays is a lot of educated people are, using it. And I'm sure a lot of people know that drug is a bad thing, drinking is a bad thing, smoking is a bad thing. So these bad karmas or bad, these things are bad. So that is why people say don't smoke, don't drink. And then obviously having drug is definitely very, very bad. In spite of, you mentioned culture. Now, in spite of having as part of the culture, it was never considered as a very good thing, getting into narcotics. So why you, I don't know whether you will like to dwell into this subject where the educated class or really the creme de la creme is now getting into the drug abuse. Is there a reason
Yes.
for this drug abuse?
Well, basically, if you see now, though 80s, 70s was a different era, but now even a lot of countries which had heavily tried to restrict these drugs like cannabis, hemp, have now, in fact, taken a different turn and has now legalized and regulated the use of cannabis in a lot of countries, like Canada and Netherlands also has regulated its and permitted the use of cannabis. Also, USA, a lot of states have now relaxed their provisions regarding the use of cannabis. So, but though, of course, it can't be recommended, it can't be prescribed, or it can't be said that everybody must do this. Ultimately, it's a personal choice, and every individual has an autonomy to decide what is best for him. And that privacy and that decision should be left. That is what my personal belief is. Be left to each individual, and the state, though, has an important role. Of course, it must be seen that abuse has to be restricted because it is neither morally good for the country, even economically is not good, because the best the best people, the best brain, the resources of the country are drained out, and certainly it is not something that should be used so prevalently, and there should be curbs, and it should be restricted, and also there has to be severe punishments for cultivation and illegal use and sale of such substances.
So
But culturally, yeah.
So you mentioned that the educated class or really the creme de la creme is now getting into this, and this is where the government challenge is to stop it, because some of the role models might percolate it downwards, and it is not good for the people. So how much is the quantity? Is it permitted at all? First question, and part two is there a limited quantity that people can have legally?
Actually, no quantity is a permissible quantity except it is for the use of for medicine or for scientific purpose. There are authorities prescribed from where licenses have to be procured, and based on such licenses, the permissible use can be done for medicine purpose. But also with regards to medicinal purpose, a lot of day-to-day medicines which are taken by probably all of us also contain some form of narcotic, synthetic or semi-synthetic drugs. If I give you an example, codeine, which is also a very prevalent substance abuse, which is abused, is used in a lot of cough syrups. So a lot of people get addicted to such cough syrups and they are being abused. Also, morphine, which is also a psychotropic substance, is used in a lot of painkillers. So is opium. And all these painkillers are provided over the counters and people can easily buy it. And however, a longer use is not good for health, and also sometimes people can get addicted to such medicines as well. So I would say that every individual has some or other way has consumed these drugs, but purposefully doing it for recreational purpose alone and then getting addicted and being abused by this drug is something which has to be regulated. And yes, as the government is now coming down on all these celebrities, because as you said, they are role models and people look up to them. If they get into such activities and openly do it, then yes, that will create a big problem for the country and the future of this country. So, what is permissible limit you are asking, and what is the is there any limit which can be permitted? Yes. According to the Act, the NDPS Act has classified these limits into small quantity and commercial quantity. So, if somebody is found to be in possession of any of these narcotics, in fact, there are more than 200 substances which are being prescribed under the Act, and every substance has been given a limit. So, for example, if you say weed, which is known as ganja or derived from cannabis plant, the small quantity is prescribed as 1 kilogram, and more than 100 kilogram is prescribed as the commercial. So, if somebody, it is not that it is legal or it is permissible to have less than 1 kg. It is also an offense to have even 1 gram. The difference is this, that if you are found with lesser amount than prescribed for small quantity, the offense is not so serious, and the maximum punishment prescribed would be less than 1 year or a fine up to 10,000 rupees. But whereas if you are found with a commercial quantity which is more than 100 kgs, then the punishment can be more than 10 years up to 20 years, depending on the quantity, and also your antecedents. Because if you are found, if this is a second or third case against you, then there can be death penalty as well. But I may just quickly go through the provisions. If I can just, what is the quantity prescribed for small and commercial quantities? So the popular, which you might be aware of, the drug called cocaine. For cocaine, small quantity is 2 grams, whereas commercial quantity is more than 100 grams. If a person is found to be in possession of less than 2 grams of cocaine, then the maximum punishment which is prescribed under the Act is of up to 1 year. And if he is found having more than 100 grams, which is commercial quantity, then the punishment prescribed is more than 10 years up to 20 years. But if it is between 2 grams to 100 grams, then the punishment can be up to 10 years, any period of imprisonment up to 10 years. So another narcotic drug which is also popularly used is codeine, which I just said is used in cough syrups. So there the small quantity is 10 grams and the commercial quantity is 1 kg. So if somebody is found having less than 10 grams, then the punishment is much lesser, up to 1 year. But if it is found with more than 1 kg, then it is up to 10 years to 20 years. Also ganja, as I said, is 1 kg is the small quantity, and commercial quantity is 20 kg. Heroin is also one of the mostly abused drugs, wherein the small quantity is 5 grams and commercial quantity is 250 grams. Another one popularly known as Mandrax, which is the methaqualone, known as methaqualone, wherein the small quantity is 20 grams and the commercial quantity is 500 grams. And morphine, which is also used in a lot of painkillers, is the small quantity is 5 grams and the commercial quantity is 250 grams. For all these drugs, the small and commercial quantity are prescribed under the schedule, and based on that, the prosecution presses the charges and the punishment is accordingly prescribed. This is the difference, but it is not that less than small quantity is legal or it is permissible and it can be used. It is absolutely an offense. Even a smallest quantity of any sort of narcotic, psychotropic, is an offense. It is illegal. You can't use it. It is you can't sell it. You can't even have it in your possession. And the provisions are so stringent that even if it is found in your residence, in your car, in your office, or wherever it is found in your area which is in your ownership, then the law presumes that you had the knowledge that it was in your possession, and the law presumes that it is with your knowledge that you had this sort of drug. Also, another why this is very stringent is that normally under the criminal law, the presumption of innocence is always upon the accused, and he is presumed to be innocent until found guilty. After the trial, ultimately the court decides whether he is guilty or innocent. But till then, the presumption of innocence is there. But in this act, it is a reverse presumption. In fact, he is proved to be guilty unless he himself tries to prove that he is innocent. Therefore, these are very stringent provisions and very strict punishment, harsh punishment, and law is also very strict in that.
So, Jeet, I think you put it quite nicely. It is not good to have any sort of narcotics with you or any connection of any sort. So, I think the message is very loud and clear coming from a person like you who's a legal luminary, telling the people that not to have anything to do with any sort of drug. Now, uh, I think you mentioned in the beginning that there is a culture issue, and bhang is used mostly. I mean, we know, I mean, during Holi, the bhang is used, and also we have the folklores and also the songs coming out, which are promoting use of bhang. So, what is bhang? Is it a drug or it's not a drug?
So yes, well, bhang is another controversial topic because basically bhang has been used since a long period of time, and it has some cultural importance as well because it is consumed during festivals like Holi and Shivratri. And the lawmakers have left a loophole, and very smartly so, because when the Act of 1985 came into existence, in the definition of cannabis hemp, they very smartly, I would say, did not include the seeds and leaves of the cannabis plant as a narcotic substance. If I may just quickly refer to this definition of cannabis. Cannabis, what is also known as ganja, that is the flowering or fruiting tops of the cannabis plant. But the lawmakers excluded the seeds and leaves when they are not accompanied by the tops, that is the fruiting top. Fruiting top is the ganja. The what is derived from seeds and its leaves is usually what is mixed and known as bhang. So under the Act, under the NDPS Act, the seeds and leaves are excluded, and therefore what is derived from seeds and leaves does not include in the definition of cannabis and is not a narcotic. And there are some judicial pronouncements of Rajasthan and Chandigarh High Court, which has also taken the view that consumption and possession of bhang will not be covered under the NDPS Act and is not a narcotic. And therefore, you cannot prosecute someone if if he's in possession of bhang. But then every state has its own different enactments. And Gujarat basically has a Gujarat Prohibition Act, which has in its definition included bhang as a cannabis. Therefore, though NDPS Act will not be applicable if you are found having possession of bhang or if you are found consuming bhang, but you will certainly violate the Gujarat Prohibition Act and you will end up being in jail, not under the Narcotics Act, but under the Gujarat Prohibition Act. But under Rajasthan and some other states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, I think NDPS Act would certainly not apply, and even state legislation does not put it as an offense. Therefore, you find some licensed government shops in Rajasthan and some other districts where bhang is legally being sold in those states, especially in some of the areas of those states. So bhang has been left out, and because of this cultural importance and the the attachment that it has to these festivals like Holi and Shivratri. So therefore, bhang is not not covered under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act of 1985.
So I think we would like to still recommend that people should not have bhang also, because you don't know where what law applies. So until unless you have clarity of what is legally permissible, you should not get into certain things. So now we will come to the moot point. So many Bollywood people and senior creme de la creme is now getting paraded in front of National NCB, which is the National Bureau of Prevention of Narcotics in India. So,
narcotics, right?
so basically, do you think they have committed some offense by exchanging the WhatsApp, which has been intercepted, or probably that has been shared in the public domain, or do you think there is no offense?
Well, it's difficult to say whether they have committed any offense or not, because if you see from what is coming through media, I don't think any celebrity has been found to be in possession of any drugs, because possession is one of the most important aspects to bring any of these offenses. Though use and selling and even permitting someone to buy will also be covered under the offenses. But they have not been found, I think, except what I come across through media reports is that Riya Chakrabarti was having possession of, I think, weed and some hashish, which was recovered from her possession. But that quantity was also very less, and that quantity cannot in any way be brought under the commercial quantity. So there was very less quantity, a small quantity, and also no other celebrity has been found to be in possession. And however, what investigations are going on is because some chats have been found where it appears that they've been referring it to something as drugs and talking about it. But with respect to if such chats and if some details come about, then the NCB, that's the National Bureau for Narcotics, are certainly, it is within their reach and jurisdiction to call for information, and they can call for witnesses. They can summon the witnesses, and the witnesses are under an obligation to provide the information or whatever knowledge that they have to share it. And ultimately, it is for the NCB to decide whether any charges are can be brought against all these celebrities or not. But ultimately, it depends on what investigation is carried on, what is recovered from there, and what are the proof available. Otherwise, only on the basis of chat and which is not very clear, charges cannot be pressed against all the celebrities.
So, Jeet, sometime back you mentioned that if the quantity is recovered, then there is a clear evidence available. And if the quantity is not recovered, is there a provision, or how does the law looks at the circumstantial evidence, which is some sort of, somebody says, hey, I've supplied the drug to this and this person. Will that hold any water?
Confession, basically, confession to the officers of the NCB are admissible, and that depends on whether they come out and say the same thing before the court or not. Because their statements made to the NCP, though being admissible, will ultimately be put to test when they come and depose during the trial. During the trial, if they retract or say that this confession was under coercion or under force or due to duress, then that will depend on the other relevant evidence which has been gathered. So basically, confession under the Indian law is a very weak evidence, and only under the NDPS there are provisions that say that confession can be admissible, but that will also have to depend on other evidences which have been collected. Otherwise, under the Indian law, confession made to the police officers is absolutely inadmissible and cannot be used against the accused. That will be a very weak evidence.
Yeah, so I think the last question we have in this program is, in that case, since there is no evidence to link the celebrity with the drug, do you think it is right to parade all the celebrity in front of media, in front of NCB?
Well, it is within the jurisdiction of the NCB to call for information, to call for witnesses, those who they think have some knowledge of any offense having been committed. So it is not wrong to call them for investigation and to investigate or inquire from them and gather information which is relevant for the investigation that is going on. But unnecessarily trying to parade every other celebrity, I don't think that is the intention of the, or that should be the intention of the NCB. But in order to gather information, they can certainly call for these celebrities and ask them and inquire from them and investigate them.
So I think we had a very wonderful discussion today, Jeet, and I think our viewers would know about what is right, what is wrong, what is permissible, what is not permissible, and also a little bit about NDPS Act, which governs all these aspects. So it was